Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Creative Nonsense Podcast. Today, I will be talking with Vincent, aka Ihanvi, about his hobbies in art and coding.
Shrek 5, confirmed.
Oh dear. That's gonna keep going until like the end of time now.
Especially with like Netflix, I find that kind of weird how they take like DreamWorks things and just keep on pumping out like these crappy animations. Some of them are good, granted, some of them are good, but like the whole like Puss in Boots, whatever the heck that show was, the animation is just so dulled down. And a lot of Netflix shows, they're really good ones, but then there are ones like the remake of The Magic School Bus, which all the animation has no character in it. Like you're starting to get into like animation and stuff. The details and like the way everything was done, and you look at the new show. The new show is bland. It has no character. It's just everyone looks the same. It's just
That's one
it's
really
bad.
interesting thing that I found out. Actually watching shows with my baby cousin, like all of her little like kid shows, is that a lot of them are more like they're very standard with their characters, but a lot of them are like 3D animated now. Like a
Yeah,
lot of
but they
them.
don't need to be.
Yeah, it's very strange. So like I was watching they have all these different my Theo was saying like I've seen so many Trolls movies and somehow I still haven't seen all of them. Like there's just so many. Like they have like the
Hey,
movies and the little TV shows and it's like Trolls Holiday, which was like it was like a fever dream watching that. I was like, what is going on? I think these trolls are actually tripping out during this. And I'm like, and this is a kid's show, which was fascinating. And
well, I
then
mean,
there was
they did
another
that
one
with
with
like
like monsters, which was also, they kind of looked the same. They're all very
yeah,
round and tiny.
they did that kind of with like Shrek back in the day. There was like the Christmas special and the Halloween
Yeah.
special that they made for it, but those were kind of short movies. It was kind of like I think Frozen had one where it was like oh, it's the wedding day or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
My little brother was really into Frozen.
I know that they
It
did
was
that with Tangled.
yes, I liked Tangled mainly because Zachary Levi was in it, and I love anything that man is in,
Same. Did you watch Chuck
except
when
for
Chuck was on?
oh, I saw it a bit when it was on. I was a bit. I don't want to say I was young. I didn't have TV.
Mhm.
I mean, I had like cable when I was a kid, but then the excuse was that my brother watched too much Power Rangers and was too violent. So if they caught him watching Power Rangers again, they'd take away the TV. So they caught him watching Power Rangers again, and they took away the TV. Later on, it was just that they didn't want to pay for TV anymore. So
Wow.
and then Netflix comes around, and my little brother watches all of the 17 seasons of Power Rangers, and you're like, oh, well, that's kind of unfair, but cool. That show got progressively worse. Like it started off amazing,
Mhm.
but like the new seasons are like, oh, I want to just not. Like I rewatched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and I was like very pleased with it. I was like, this holds up. It's like a bad old video game where it's like the graphics are exactly the way you remember them. Because like some games you're like, oh my, like my favorite example. There's the Harry Potter classic games,
Mhm.
like 1 and 2. Not many people. They were very staple in my childhood, and also Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. They kind of have the same kind of like graphics, but like when I played Harry Potter 4, which was not the same style at all. My memory of it was that it was like this really good looking game, and then I went back and I downloaded it off the disc I had that I paid for because we paid for games,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Dang, this is bad. This is really bad. Why did I like this?" But then you look at like the Harry Potter, the like 1 and 2, and the Star Wars games, and you're like, they are exactly how you remember them looking, and that's a good game when it's like exactly the way you remember it. Your memory isn't like tarnished. It's just like you go back and like Shrek or Toy Story. Toy Story, it still looks the same way you remember it. Shrek looks the same way. It's not beautiful. It's not the best, but at the time it was great, and it still holds up. Unlike, say, no examples, but like Star Wars the prequels, some of the
Mhm.
graphs, especially the first one. You look at those, and some of the 3D stuff doesn't really hold up at all.
That's what always happens when like you go back and watch movies. Some movies are like amazing, like 2000 Space Odyssey, whatever it is.
Oh, 2001.
2001,
See
that's what it
that?
is.
See, I have very adverse feelings about that movie.
Some people really like it and some people really hate it. Like my
I
mom
don't think
loves that
there's
movie.
there's nobody in the middle with that movie. It's like either
No.
you loved it or you hate it. My dad's computer, like his username on his old like computers used to be HAL 2000, whatever the year he got the computer in was. And, like we were forced to watch that movie in class, but we watched it in like the theater room in the school. So it's like we're actually like in a crappy old movie. No, it's not crappy. It's just not like a nice movie theater, but it's like one with like kind of stiff wooden chairs that you don't fit in because you're 6'6". And we're watching this movie, and like there were people that fell asleep for huge chunks of the movie, and like our teacher's like, yes, there's going to be like 15 minutes of black before it starts because it's kind of designed that way to be like kind of like, oh, what's going on? I'm like, that just seems like a bad idea. Like, why can't we skip the 15 minutes of black? Do we have to watch this in like this 3-hour movie? And then there's just periods of the movie that it's just like, ooh, cool effects. Can we get to the movie now? And it just, oh, it was so dreadful.
But for
Like
being
it's
like the 60s, like I feel like
yeah,
it's not the
it's
worst.
very impressive.
It could have
It's a
been
very
much
impressive
worse.
movie. It could have been much worse. Very impressive effects. There are some that kind of bother me, like where it's like, oh, the shot was more important than the actual. Like there was the
Yeah.
one, the big circle one that was cool, like where they're walking and the guy's strapped into his chair and he's doing like turns and stuff. That's really interesting because we watched some behind the scenes stuff on it. But there's one shot in the whole movie where they're kind of like just going through the neck of a spaceship or whatever. They're going up to some control room, and the one bit is spinning, and he walks on and it's spinning, and then it gets into the next hallway, and you look at the exterior of the ship, and you're like, none of this is spinning. Why was there spinning?
They couldn't make that
Nothing's
graphic
turning.
spin.
Like, oh, cool camera shot, but nothing is happening. So sometimes it's like little things like that, and I'm just kind of like, why? It's cool, but there was no purpose.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are like that. Like the whole like the blocks that he pushes in for like it's like some kind of like key to like put in, and I'm like, why is it set up like this? I know that it's like fancy.
Yeah, let's flip this switch, that switch, this one, that button, and it's like, could you just like one button? You don't need to hit 79 switches to say hello to Hal.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like it was good, but it was like they were trying to go for like look at this spectacle type thing, which is what happened with a lot of movies like back then. But it's even funnier like comparing like American cinema to like just like British anything up until like 2005 maybe. There was like no British funding forever, and then it's like just watching like TV shows get progressively better. Like it didn't happen for a while, and then all of a sudden it was like British TV shows are good.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite British TV shows was Primeval, which was like this. It had like 5 series, I guess, and it's about like these like I don't know scientists, and they're in the normal world, but there are these like anomalies where like it just cracks in space and times, and dinosaurs come through, and that's them trying to like get. But it was like really well animated and stuff. Like it was like real life with like 3D dinosaurs. It was really well made. And it had like a cool story where like, oh, the ripple effect through time, and oh no, now the people don't remember me, and cool stuff. And then they actually had a Canadian spin-off that I think only lasted a season, and I was so bummed about it because I was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be more. Because when I finished watching, I was like, oh, that's it, 50-something episodes, like, more. And then like it was like even a continuation of like the old one. But it was like because it had to do with time, it was like the other one was in the future, and I was like, oh, it was so like cool, and like some of the characters came over, but then it got canceled because they put it at like 11 at night when nobody wants to watch dinosaurs coming through cracks in time.
Oh my God, Arthur on BBC when that was a thing. Oh no, it was Merlin. That's the name of it.
Merlin, I love
Dude,
Merlin. Oh my
was
god,
great. But then,
like
my friend had like finished watching it, and like they had found out that it was canceled, and like that was like the end. Like that's when they like.
Well, I mean, wasn't it like 5 seasons?
It was 5, yeah, but like they
the
killed
British
them off
seasons
prematurely because that was like the end.
Well, I mean, the ending wasn't that rushed. I found like the way they ended it. Like I don't know, spoilers for Merlin, whenever the hell that came out. The ending I kind of found neat. How they're like, oh, he never died. He's now an old man walking down modern streets. And I was like, that's kind of neat.
Are the new Jurassic movies good? Because I haven't seen
Have you not seen any of them? The first case, the Jurassic World was kind of, I don't know, it was a rehash. It wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fine movie. right? It's kind of like, it's a movie. It's like the new Jumanji movie. It's not bad. It's no like, it's no 2001. But the second one, I went to go see that one in theaters the other week, I guess, because it just came out, and it took a new take on it. I guess it's more human. It focused less on like the dinosaurs themselves and more on the human aspect of it, and it was kind of, I enjoyed it. I don't think critics enjoyed it as much. It had like the same kind of emotional weight near the end as like, I just was forced to watch the new Ghostbusters movie last night. I didn't want to watch it, but my dad put it on for supper, and I was like, dang, this is a thing that's happening now. Didn't want to watch this. It's a train wreck of a movie, and I laughed at some of the jokes just because of how dumb they were, but like the ending of it just felt like there was no weight in anything. It was like, oh cool, they're killing ghosts and stuff, and it's like, you don't feel anything. I was like, I feel like this should be cooler, but I don't understand what's going on. There's just a lot of ghosts everywhere and coming out of a fog, and there's a big tall Abraham Lincoln guy pointing and doing stuff, and then Chris Hemsworth over there being possessed, and it's like, what's happening?
I've never seen the original Ghostbusters, so I don't know how I'd feel about the new Ghostbusters, but I've played Luigi's Mansion, and I feel like those are the same thing.
I feel like those are definitely the same thing.
Have you ever played that
Except
game?
for one.
You're Luigi and you have like a vacuum, you're literally like sucking up ghosts.
I think my brother, I played like one of the newer ones that came with my little brother's DS. So I never played any of the old Mario games because like my first video games, other than like computer games, was I got a Wii, and that was just because my dad was against video games for the longest time. But my brother and we'd buy like the Star Wars games for the computer, or like the Star Wars games for the computer. I guess that was all we played. But yeah, no, my cousins always had like the Nintendo stuff, so whenever we went over to my cousin's place, I was always like, oh cool, let's play. I remember loving Super Mario Sunshine, and I remember playing the opening level of that game about 20 times because they didn't, I just show up and like, here's this empty save file, let's just play that. So I always just played the opening of the game over and over again. And then I found out later that they actually had Xboxes and PlayStations. They just put it away when we'd come over because they thought it was too violent for us. So I was like, this whole time I thought that they only ever played Nintendo games for 19 years. I was like, they're the Nintendo freaks. They always play Nintendo. And then I show up and like got like Bloodborne running on the on the TV, and they got like The Last Guardian, and I was like, I feel like my whole world is just shattered. I was like, you guys were always
you this whole time.
You were the Nintendo cousins. That's all you did. It was the Nintendo. Like I bought myself a PlayStation 3 a couple years ago just because I wanted to play new games because we only had a Wii. And no, my brother had a PlayStation 3 and he moved out to the East Coast, so then he brought that with him, and I was like, man, I really want to play some PlayStation games. So I bought one off of his buddies, and I got like the Assassin's Creed game. And my brother just got a PS4 the other week before he moved to the West Coast, but left it here, so that was fun. And I got like the new Assassin's Creed games, and I'm like, the graphics are better, but like I feel like the PlayStation 3, the PS3 and PS4 are still passable. Like the PS3, still very good console. It's not like the PS2 where it's completely useless and is worth nothing, and the graphics are awful. The PS3 is actually like still good. The graphics aren't bad. So I found that interesting when it came to like the evolution of graphics, and the fact that the PlayStation 3 was around for like 10 years before they released another. Like the Xbox 360 and the PS3 were around for a very long time before
I'm so
anything else
sad
happened.
that like the Xbox One is a thing because I have so much on the Xbox 360 that I just still want to play all the time, but then I'm like, I can't get any new games anymore, and it's just but all the old stuff's great. I pretty much just ended up buying everything for PC on the Steam sale. I was like, I want Left 4 Dead again, and I want Portal, and I'm getting a new PC soon, so I'll be able to play all of them again.
Yeah, one day I'm gonna get a PC. Like, I mean, I had my Acer, but I was like, I need a Mac. Mac is good for editing and graphic design and stuff. It has you don't have the new one. The touchpad is like literally like, this is my phone, It is bigger than my phone, the touchpad. It is amazing, the trackpad. And the
Oh,
whole thing is a button. The whole thing's a button. It's like, you don't have to like click at the bottom of it and scroll around or lift your finger and click. The whole thing is a button. It's a revolutionary. It's one of those like you'd have to be there moments, but like the whole thing's a button.
I don't understand. What do you use that for?
Well, no, like if like for photoshopping, for example, like you can just like scroll around up, down, side, left. You don't have to like hit a button, change the scroll, drag it around. You can zoom in just by pinching. You can twist it around, and it's like you can just do all these things, and it's so useful.
You can't get trackpads for like a PC?
Yes, you can. I mean, but it's also an Apple, which I hate. Okay, this is the thing. I used to always want an iPhone when I was a kid. I always wanted an iPod. I bought myself an iPod Touch 4, and I was like, that's cool. I had an iPod Nano before that, and I was like, cool, moving my way up, making my way up. Bought myself an iPod Touch. Best thing ever. I love the iPod. I found that Apple made the best music players, and my mom bought one of like the early MacBooks, and I was like, that's really cool. I like that. For my 18th for like Christmas a few years ago, my mom bought me a Samsung Galaxy Grand Prime, which sounds like it should be really cool, but it's literally their worst phone they've ever made. It might as well have exploded in my pocket. But like it was like marketed as like their low-end smartphone, entry smartphone, which I don't know what that means. What's an entry level smartphone?
Like
Not,
just the cheapest one that requires the least
yeah.
amount of skill to use?
Well, no, the highest resolution on it was 480,
Oh no.
and I got that 2 years ago.
That's
480, like the camera on the back was 8 megapixels. I was like, this is a terrible phone. But it opened my eyes up to Android, and all the things you can do with Android.
Android
Like
is very much like good for like if you want to customize things, that is what
Yes.
Android is for. If you like
Well-
simplistic, like whatever, like just easily accessible, you want the Apple stuff.
Well, not even but like say I can plug a USB key into my phone and transfer things. I can plug a USB key into my phone. I could put a movie on it just by dragging a video file onto my phone from a USB key. My buddy had an LG, which was a terrible phone. Like it was an older one. It's like when my contract's up, I'm gonna get an iPhone so it's more compatible with what we're working on. I was like, what do you mean it's more compatible with what we're working on? It's like, well, we're using Macs. Well, I'm like, yes, but how does it make it more compatible? He's like, well, it's Apple. I'm like, but what can you do with it that makes it more compatible? You can transfer photos and music off of your phone if it's plugged into a computer.
No, you can have everything in the little cloud. That's what I
Yes,
like. Is
but
that I can
you
just
do
like
that with anything. Have a Google Drive. Like,
True. I have Google Drive too, but it's just the folders are different. Like I'm very much like in that whole thing, and it's gonna freak me out when I get a PC just because all my files are like in the Apple iCloud, and I'm gonna have to sort through that. But like literally, if I want to like edit my book from like my phone, I can just be like, oh, what's the name of that file? Go into there. What's that PDF I downloaded from my class earlier? It's over here. It's just
but
nice that way.
I'm pretty sure you can download the iCloud for PC. I haven't used a PC like a tower computer in like 7 years, but
You
like
can use it from like the web, which is
yes,
yeah, it pretty much looks the same, which is nice.
Yeah.
Had to.
but I will say
I
love Apple computers. I hate Windows. I hate it so much. It's so annoying, and it doesn't like. It's not that it looks bad. It's just so inconsistent with itself. Like at work right now, I have to use Windows, and it's like, gosh, it's so annoying. Just using Windows Explorer, which isn't File Explorer, they changed their names too. Like Mac has Finder. Windows 7 had Windows Explorer, which is their Finder. But then Windows 8 and 10, I think, had File Explorer, which makes more sense because they also have Internet Explorer, which is Windows or Microsoft, and it's like, this is just so confusing.
But they also have Microsoft Edge now, which is another thing.
I thought they were like, oh, cool, they made Edge. It's better than Microsoft Explorer, which it is, I guess, arguably. But they still have Explorer on your computer. I looked at my laptop. I was like, wait, I have both? Why do I have both? I thought this was supposed to replace the old one.
That was one thing when like I boot camped my Mac and like I was going through all the stuff and there's so much bloatware that just comes with like Windows 10 and I'm like,
Oh
get
yeah,
off of here. Why are
especially if
you
you get like
here?
my Acer had like, oh, here's your Acer this, Acer that. I'm like, yeah, delete, uninstall, go away, go away, go away, go away. But Macs don't do that. Macs are nice. They're expensive,
Yeah.
but they're nice.
And a bunch of stuff that if it does come pre-installed, you can just delete it. And it's pretty
Yes.
nice. It's like, you don't need this. These are just
No.
developer tools that will hide in a corner that we won't put on your dock, and then I'll drag them out into the dock anyways because I mess with them all the time.
Oh yeah. See, with the dock, where do you put it on your screen? Because do you have it on the bottom?
I have it on the bottom. I know people who
Oh.
have it on the right side, and it really freaks me out.
Yeah, I put mine on the left on a Mac. But the only reason I have it on the left is because in my class I had like the dual monitor set up, and the main one was on the left, so I just put it on the left side. So on my Windows I have it on the right. Do you know why it makes more sense to be on the right or left?
No.
Screen size. It takes up less space if it's on the left because it's taking up the height and not the width. So if it's on the side, you gain that much more space, right? You instead of losing this much, you're only losing like this much width. And like it shapes your screen differently. You have much more height than you do width. It makes more sense if you it makes sense. Just go with it.
Interesting. I feel like I'll have to try it now, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. It definitely has to do with the dimensions of your screen, because when it's on the bottom, it's taking up a whole lot more space. Granted, with Mac, you can just hide it, which I also don't like, because then like you have to like slide down and hit it again, and then it finally shows up. And it's like, oh, cool, now
And
it's
then you
here.
accidentally open an application at the same time.
Yes, it's the most annoying thing. Yeah, it's a magical thing when you think about it, how it works. Like everything, you have to think, at some point somebody thought to do that. That's why I think people are kind of... Anybody who was credited, oh, he's a smart guy, he did this. Yeah, a lot of them were just insane people. Like, to say milk. Somebody saw a cow at some point, saw that it had a dangly bit underneath it, and decided to squeeze it. And then that's, as if that wasn't enough, they're like, I wonder what that tastes like. And they squeezed it, and then they drank it. But then the next idiot was like, hey, wait a second. Now that white stuff that's come out of this spotted animal is now left out in the sun, and now it's becoming all chunky. I wonder what that tastes like. And then there's the other dude who's like, hey, this chunky stuff's really cool. What if I wanted to keep it for later? Left it down in his basement. And then he let it sit there for a while. And then a few years later, he's like, hey, I wonder what that tastes like now. It's like, who thought of that?
Yeah,
Who,
I feel like the person who thought of cheese was much more crazy than the person who was like, let's milk a cow. Because they were probably
Yeah.
like, the baby cows drink the thing, like they drink
we
from
drink
like
out
mothers.
of women.
Like,
It's all, yeah.
This-
That made more sense. But the cheese...
yeah, that's
I
a
think
little
it'd be
shifty.
a worse idea. I think it'd be even weirder if it was like the guy who came up with cheese thought of it because his wife or whatever, or her or whatever, at some point that they were trying to store their own like breast milk for the children, and it became chunky and decided to eat it. And I was like, I wonder what happens if cows, because they're much more easy to get milk from. We don't have to wait a few months to get somebody ready. It's just that'd be a much weirder industry if it was like if cows didn't exist and we had to like get milk from women. That'd be a very odd, like, that'd be a freaking weird society.
I would hope that we just wouldn't, because we don't need milk. I would hope that they wouldn't be like, let's milk the women for their milk. It tastes kind of sweet.
Well, didn't they do that in Mad Max? The new one?
I didn't
think
see
that
Mad
was like the whole...
Max. I have not
I remember
seen
it was-
a lot of new movies.
I mean, that one came out like 4 years ago, so...
New.
I mean, technically-
I think since the 90s. I haven't seen a lot of movies since the 90s.
Aren't you only like a year or two older than me?
Yeah, but I mean, like, movies that, like, I grew up watching with, like, my grandparents and my mom. I watched a lot of, like, old rom-coms and, like, movies from the 80s. And, like, every now and then I'll watch a new movie, but a lot of movies I watch are, like, things that I watched as a kid, which are things that, like, my mom and, like, my grandparents watched. So it's, like, weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be against only just rewatching the old movies that I watched as a kid, because I watched like a lot of Jim Carrey, like another Canadian treasure right there, Jim Carrey.
I
I
mostly
think.
just like follow all of like the actors like from that phase though. So it's like Natalie Portman. I've watched like everything in Natalie Portman's catalog. I'm
See,
working
wait,
through Winona
what would
Ryder
Natalie
right now.
Portman be? What would she be doing back then? Because
Leon the Professional, Beautiful Girls. I'm trying to think of other movies. Those are like two of my favorites of hers, and it's like 94 and 96, which is like
the Star Wars prequel movies.
no, not that. That's like the worst thing she's ever been in.
Who? I don't
Leon the
know.
Professional is good if you haven't seen that. That's like my favorite movie.
My favorite movies are just some of the weirdest movies ever. Like, not weird, they're just movies that lots. It's like Swiss Army Man is one of my favorite movies.
Interesting.
It's a weird movie. It's very strange. I enjoy it. It's got a nice soundtrack. It's got very odd things happening.
That has Daniel Radcliffe, right?
It's a dead body, yeah.
Yeah, I just remember seeing previews to that and being very confused as to what was it about.
It's a very good movie. It opens with Paul Dano riding Daniel Radcliffe as a jet ski, propelled by his farts. It's an amazing movie. Nothing is wrong. It's directed by the guys who directed Turn Down for What?
Oh my
like
God.
the music video where like the junk is moving. That was the directors that directed Swiss Army Man. A great movie. I just like oddball movies. Like one of my favorite movies is Epic Movie. It's a terrible movie. I know it's a terrible movie, but like it was the object of my desire when I was a kid, because everybody watched the trailer. I didn't know how to see the trailer. It was before YouTube, I think, maybe, or before I knew about YouTube. And like everybody at school was like, oh, and then like the person comes out of the wardrobe, and I was like, oh, that sounds really funny, and they're referencing all these jokes from the trailer. So then I just pretended that I had seen the trailer. And like when I finally figured out how to like see movies online, it was the first one I watched, and I was like, oh my god, this is the best movie ever. I don't know if you've seen Epic Movie.
Mm-mm.
It's like a terrible spoof movie, but like it was like the one that like
I remember it now. I remember seeing
it was the one that followed
now.
Narnia. It was like Narnia and like the X-Men and Harry Potter, and I actually met the guy who played Harry Potter in that movie because he's a Canadian actor who was in Kids of the Hall or something, and he was at my mom's CD release, and I was like, oh my gosh, that guy looks like the dude from Epic Movie who played Harry Potter. And then I looked it up, I was like, oh my god, that was the guy who played Harry Potter in Epic Movie, my favorite movie ever. It's like, dang.
Since you're
So
speaking of spoof movies, have you ever seen Airplane?
I've seen Airplane too. I've seen Airplane.
The first Airplane is amazing. Because it's just
The
like,
second one's still good. Second one's still good.
I haven't seen the second one, but like the first one is just like, me and my mom quote that movie constantly. There was a good year where we watched that movie, like us and my grandparents, like probably on a loop like every weekend. Like it was just,
Oh yeah.
we always watched Airplane. I think that's the other reason why like I just like gravitate towards like those movies is because like I'm an only child. My mom's basically like my other sibling, and like we lived with my grandparents for a long time when I was little. So it's like
Yeah.
I watched like old stuff a bunch of times like when I was little.
See, I never really. I watched like old movies with my grandparents because they have like VHS tapes and stuff, and I watched Betamax with my dad because he was younger than them and had Betamax. But like, I don't know. I always preferred my movie choices have always been strange. Like, and I was the like back when Blockbusters was a thing. Actually, no, Jumbo movies, Jumbo Video. They had free popcorn. Like, you know, you'd rent the movie, and my brother would always get annoyed with me because I'd use the TV and watch the movie 7 times in a row just so I could get it into my memory. I remember, I think the one I did it with that I can remember was Clash of the Titans, but not like the old one, the remake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that one I rewatched like 4 times, but like I just used to do that. We'd rent a movie and I'd watch it like, I'm getting my money's worth out of this movie. Watch it 20 times.
That was me, but with like Sailor Moon, like R and S, like those movies were so good, and I still think about them constantly. But what you were saying about Clash of the Titans, the new one is really good. The old one cracks me up though, because that like mechanical
the animation
owl
is hilarious.
and like the guy just like floating in the middle of water, which he's just literally like there, and then the Kraken, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no.
It's so good.
The sequel to the new one wasn't that great, I remember.
I didn't realize they made one, so that probably says something.
Wrath of the Titan. I don't remember. Actually, no, that was the one I watched like 7 times. I don't know. It's like Gods of Egypt. I enjoyed Gods of Egypt. It's a fun movie, but like it's just a movie. It's not like one of those critically acclaimed like Marvel movies where it's like, oh wow, it's all these new things and it's here you go, 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like that's neat. Most of my favorite movies don't have very high ratings.
Same. I think that girl who was in, now that I'm thinking about Clash of the Titans, I think that same girl who was in there, she's the one who's in Prince of Persia. I think.
Could be. Because I remember watching Prince. It was one of those good bad movies where it was like, it's good, but like it's not that good.
I like the video game, so that's why I was like, I'm invested in the movie.
I never, since I never really played any video games, I never like had any like, oh, this is based on a video game. Like I remember watching like Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life or whatever on DVD, and I was like, that's a fine movie, I guess.
I watch so many like old game Let's Plays. Like that's usually like how I get into those, where it's just like.
I remember I got back into RuneScape.
Oh god.
Because I saw that Game Grumps had a playthrough on RuneScape, or just a short one. I was like, that's the feels right there. Whew, my childhood. I remember like, I was never good at it. Me and my brother would just play RuneScape all the time, or like Adventure Quest. Those ones were like, those were the RPGs. I don't know if you ever played Adventure Quest or that realm of games with like Dragon.
I played RuneScape because my cousin's cousin played RuneScape, and I remember one time we were at his house, and like he was like the not related to me cousin, and like when we like went over to their house, I remember seeing like all of his Pokeballs, and like he had like fake swords, and he was playing RuneScape on his computer in the back room, and I was like, he's cool.
that was my cousin Ryan for me. And my cousin Carly, they were the Nintendo people, but like my cousin Ryan would be playing some like MMO on his laptop, and I was like, that's cool, I want to play that game. I had very low standards. I'd see anything, and I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. Old computer games were fun. I still
have a whole like whole like CD case filled with them over there, and I'm so mad because I don't have a PC that's like compatible with any of those anymore, and I'm like, I had so many games. I just want to like go back and like listen to them because they all have such, bad soundtracks and just.
Oh yeah, no. My favorite, I had a lot of Lego games, like, you had the Lego Star Wars games, but I had, like, Lego Soccer and, like, Lego Extreme Island 2, Extreme Stunts Island, where you played as this guy, and you had to, like, I just remember there's all, like, you had to, like, I don't know, you just had to do stunts and stuff on this island. You were up against, like, this guy who had, like, robot monkeys or something as bad guys, and you could just, like, steal cars and stuff. It was like Grand Theft Auto, but in Lego. And you had to like learn how to get a driver's license to you had to go through your road test, and I remember that was like the heart. I think we actually got my dad to do the road test because me and my brother were so bad at it. You had to get like the pilot's license and like the boat license to get all the different vehicles, and it's just like, this is a great game. I love this game. Nothing is wrong about this game. But then like you lose the code to download it from like the CD pack, and you're like, no, it was the greatest.
I'm really sad that, like, one game that I know is still, like, playable on computers if you have all the parts to it. There was this, like, it was, like, the Easy Bake Oven game. Like, you had this big ol', like, actual, like, thing that you could put on top of your giant keyboard back when they were, like, the big ol' box computers. And you could, like, open the oven, and it would open the oven on the screen, and you'd be putting the thing in. You had a little rolling pin, you'd, like, mash the dough, you would cut things. You had, your little mixer. You had... What else did you have? You had this little, like, squeezy thing, like, squeezing icing and stuff. And, like, you, like, baked all these things, and you had to follow the directions and set, like, the thing. Or you could, like, decorate it in weird ways. And, like, that. And there was also a game called, I bought a bunch of, like, weird, like, pack games from Sam's, which is, like, our big old, like, box store here. And, like, so there's a bunch of, like, knockoff games, which is, like, I think there's a Littlest Pet Shop knockoff thing, which was called Cats. And then there's another one... and I just remember, like, painting my cats, and, like, spraying my cats with water bottles, and, like, chasing them around the house because I was mean. And, there was a My Little Pony parody, which was, like, feeding horses, and, like, I don't remember much else. there were like puzzle games in there. And then
Yeah.
hella Barbie. There was like a Barbie spy game, which was really fun.
And the thing is, you look back at those now, and like if you actually play them, odds are they're all garbage. But
Probably. But back in the day, sitting in the
Back
computer
in the
room,
day.
it was lit.
for hours, just like I grew up. My grandparents still have this at our cottage. We have an Apple IIe, which is one of the first personal computers you could own, and it is one of the most amazing things ever to exist. You know, you put in the floppy disk. It's like, okay, flip it over now. We got the data from that. You flip it over, and you're playing Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune and Vanna White. Still Vanna White using an Apple IIe. Vanna White is still here. I don't know how old she is, but I think she's still around. And like, there was an option to turn her off because of how slow she walked. And like, it's one of the coolest things. And then like, I played Rampage, which when I saw the trailer for Rampage, the movie with The Rock about the ape getting toxic stuff in it, it didn't click in my brain that it was based off a very old video game. And I was like, wait, there's a gorilla, a giant wolf thing. I was like, oh my god, this is Rampage, the game that I played on the Apple IIe at the lake. They made this into a movie. Did that movie come out yet?
I think that came out. I've never heard of that. I don't see previews anymore because I use hella ad blocker and I don't watch TV. So
you gotta go in trending.
Ha! Trending page. Like I did such a thing. I watch my subs and my recommend sometimes.
Even the subs now are kind of useless.
Yeah, I just have. That's why I follow everybody I watch, and even things that like I tangentially watch on Twitter. I follow way too many people so that I can know if something is released.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I have Twitter. I rarely use it, just because I don't know. I've never been good with social media. Even like Instagram, I'll post. I like taking pictures, so I'll post a picture every now and then, or every couple of days. At one point, it was every day, but I never post more than one a day because at one point somebody's like, "That's a no more than one a day." But just the other day, like just yesterday or the day before, actually, I can't remember which one of the Discordees it was, but I got my 300th follower, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I've had Instagram for going on 7 years. I've been waiting for this, and it keeps on getting close. But then, like one of the spam accounts that followed me unfollows me. So then it like I keep on like I was on the spur of like 300 for like months, and every time I was like, "Oh, dude, I went odd down a few. Oh, we're going up, odd down a few." I'm like, "Come on!"
That's me at 430 on my Instagram account. I've been on 430 for the past like 4 months probably, and like I just bounce back and forth between like 420, 430, 420, 430.
Yeah.
And like I lose and gain those same like 9 constantly, which is just ridiculous. Same thing on YouTube. Like I gained 6 followers or 6 subscribers this week, but almost inevitably when I upload this podcast, I will lose those 6. And so that it's just going to keep going back and forth forever.
I don't know. I've had the same 7 subscribers on YouTube for years. And they're all like my old classmates that don't use YouTube anymore.
That's always really funny is like back in middle school, all of us made YouTube videos and we all subscribed to each other. So it's like those people are still in my subscription somewhere. It's just like I'm the only one remaining at this point, which is really funny. But I wonder if like they still check their subscriptions at all. And if they're just like, oh, that kid I used to go to middle school with, they post videos still. That's strange.
Like I think and as far as my videos go, I've only had one video that broke like 500 views, and like it was like a Minecraft video I did for like it was my 10th grade geography exam. My teacher was super cool and it was like, oh yeah, we just do projects for our last exam or presentation. And because I was always lazy and I always found a way to make a video or play video games out of a project, I was like, hey, it's geography. I have to and the whole project was like about building the perfect city. I was like, you know what I like to play that also you could perhaps build a city in? So I was like, this is cool. So I made that, and then I like used some like I don't know if there's this YouTuber who I used to really watch, the Gaming Lemon, when I was like younger, and like he just like his editing style was super like saturated and like just really upbeat music. So I just found one of the songs he used and I threw it into this video, and I was like, I like this video. I think it's got like 600 views. Like, cool. And like the earliest videos on my channel, it was like me trying to be a Let's Player when I was like probably 13, 12 years old. And like the first few videos, once again, filmed on a computer with 2 gigs of RAM, playing a modded Minecraft game. So it was like running at like 10 frames a second. And you had a little screencast-o-matic at the bottom of the screen because, you know, I'm 12 and I don't know how to record my screen. So then like the first couple episodes or whatever, it's just me walking around at 10 frames a second. And then like the second one, I was like, I need to get audio in here. So I recorded audio with my iPod and haphazardly synced them up together just in Windows Live Movie Maker. It's like, this is the coolest I've ever been. Don't think those got many views, but...
The first YouTube video I ever made was with my cousins, and we made a parody of, I don't know if you guys have like is it USPCA, like those commercials with like, it has like that sad Sarah McLachlan song that's playing, and it's like the dogs.
About the dogs? Yeah.
Okay, so...
We didn't have that commercial, but we know about it.
So me and my cousins parodied this. I was in like elementary school, and so my other cousin was probably in like 6th grade, and like my little cousin was probably in like 3rd grade. And so we got my webcam, and we recorded with my cousin's chihuahua, and we did like we played that song, but it was more of like being attacked by dogs. So it was like, and my cousin's chihuahua is named Pixie, so it was called I Was Mauled by a Pixie, and we just all kept saying that. But like we were just like, me and my cousin Lauren were like normal, and we're like, I was mauled by a pixie, I was mauled by a pixie. And then my little cousin Bella has this like towel around her neck and all these like marker like wounds on her, and she was like, I was mauled by a pixie. And then the chihuahua just like crawls up on her and she like fake screams, and like that's the whole video.
Jeez. Canada, it's kind of like, it's interesting, right? Like, we're all friendly and whatnot, but like most of Canada's near the border. Like, there's a lot of Canada. It's the number 1 or 2 on landmass. But there are more people in France than there are in Canada. You know how many times you could fit France and Canada? Or like Vegas has more people than the entirety of Canada. That's a city. One, I think, at least, at the time, when I looked that up. And it's like, the amount, like, for me to drive, like, I'm moving half an hour away from the city. There's not, like, next to nothing in between that half an hour here. You go to, like, how long is it from Texas to San Antonio? Like, 2-3 hours?
From Texas to San Antonio?
I don't know if that's a very long drive.
Texas and San Antonio.
Austin.
Okay, that's an hour and 40 minutes. I'm like, where are you referring to?
Yeah, right. Like, Texas is the state. There's a lot of states. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, in between San Antonio and Austin is mostly like a bunch of tiny cities that are slowly becoming both Austin and San Antonio. They're both cities eventually will merge into one as they eat up all the tiny cities in between. Is basically what's happening.
We've got that in a few spots in Canada, like Toronto, which you've probably heard of. It does that. Like, to get to work, like, I could never live anywhere near Toronto, because to work in Toronto, most people live outside of Toronto, like, hours away, because of how busy it is. And, like, I've heard of, like, 4-hour commutes to get to work. They work, like, to and from is 8 hours. And it's like, holy crap, it takes me 20 minutes.
No.
Like, I live, like, Winnipeg is small. It's really small. Central, like, it's, I don't know. And then, like, we have a French community here, and then some people in Quebec don't even know we exist. They're like, wait, there's French people elsewhere in Canada? And I don't know. I know it's not everyone in the province, but, like, it gives them a bad reputation at times. And then it doesn't help that at one point they wanted to separate from Canada and become their own thing.
I mean,
like, I don't know.
Texas at one point thought that they were independent enough to become one again, and not the United
Wasn't that like a
States.
Civil War?
Texas always is like, we're gonna secede from the Union, and they just always, there's never enough people who like agree.
Well, then California, I mean, there's California at one point I heard that they wanted to leave, which I was like, dope, and then they were like, hey, we could join Canada. I'm like, that's the best. I want that so much. Come on, the province of California.
That would be so weird, though, because you'd have to go in between, like, the 2 states, like, right above it, and just, like, head back and be like, we're in the United States, we're in Canada again.
Yeah, but you guys have that with Alaska.
True.
When it's
Alaska's
a
not
much
really
further
America.
distance. Yes, it is.
Not really. Those people
I mean,
with their 6 months of light and 6 months of
they have,
darkness.
but they have Blockbuster. They have Blockbuster
They
still.
still have Blockbuster.
They have a few. The only remaining Blockbusters, I believe, from what John Oliver said, are in Alaska.
I feel like that further proves my point that Alaska is.
Well, because they don't get good
States.
cell reception and streaming stuff, and internet is bad, so they to watch a movie, they still go and rent it from Blockbuster.
They're essentially the middle of nowhere.
I actually got sad the other day because I just realized that there's this one video store. I'd never been in it, but it was on like the corner, one street corner, and it was like always there. I was like, that's super cool. Video store, yes. Like it's still existing. And then just the other day, I noticed it was a law firm, and I was like, I was with my grandma at the time, and she was just like, yeah, well, would it make you feel worse that it's been like that for 2 years? And I was like, no, really? I was like crushed. I was like, how did I not notice that for 2 years that it was no longer a video store?
That was like when, what is it? Best Buy just announced that they stopped selling like CDs, like they're phasing out CDs officially. And
Like
so,
music CDs or like video DVDs?
music CDs.
Because I was gonna say they still sell like Game of Thrones seasons, so I don't think
Well, I
that
don't
would
know
be
if that's gonna stop too, but they literally just announced it like 2 days ago that they're gonna start.
Because no
phasing
one
them
buys
out.
music anymore.
Yeah, like everyone streams stuff. Like that's just
Yeah.
what it is. But yeah, and so everyone was just like, we saw like CDs become a thing and just end, and like wow. And
I mean, I was in that phase.
Austin has like
I had
record
cassettes.
stores, but I feel like that's for the hipsters. Like the
Yeah.
hipsters in Austin are like what keep many industries alive.
Well, I found that records are coming back in
They
some way.
are,
Like I saw
but that's why I
Sum
feel like it's
41
like a
was
niche
coming
thing.
out with a new. Yeah, like Sum 41's coming out with a new album. Get it on vinyl, and I was like, Sum 41's coming out with a new album on vinyl. It's like, I mean, I have, yeah, sure, I got a record player. Like, we're moving, right? So I was going through all my dad's albums and stuff. He's got like stacks upon stacks. They're like all the Dire Straits. There's lots of rock music. Lots of. I was very excited. I found that he had Pat Benatar, and I was like, oh my, that's cool. We could listen to Shadows of the Night when we're cleaning up. Listen to some good Pat Benatar because of when my grandpa passed away, we inherited all of his albums. So my dad moved all of his cool albums from the upstairs to the basement, and we never touched them again. And we listened to 50s classic music. And I was like, this is fun, I guess. Can we listen to some, like, AC/DC? You have that on vinyl. Could we do that instead? But, yeah, then, like, there was laser discs. I never saw laser discs. Those were a thing at some point. Those were, like, the transitional phase. And then CDs came around. And then Blu-rays. Blu-rays are nice. I like Blu-rays.
Well, tapes happened somewhere in between there. I saw the
Yes.
whole box of tapes underneath my bed. That are
Yeah,
both my
I grew
mom's
up, I
and
had, like,
mine.
I have no idea what this tape was, but I vividly remember it. It was a Monsters, Inc. cassette tape, like, for, like, music. And I don't know what it was. I just knew it was green with blue spots on it. And I was like, I don't know what it is. Like, I think I saw it the other day, too. We still have this tape, and I do not know what is on this tape. And it still blows my mind that I have no recollection of what is on the Monsters, Inc. tape. But we own it. And it came with a book, I think, that had buttons on it, and you could, like, make Boo say noises. And I was like, ah.
Maybe it told stories or something. Like, I had a Barbie
It was just,
karaoke
that's what it
machine.
was. It read the book for you, and then you could hit the buttons. It's kind of lame now. I thought I wanted it to be more.
Like, I had a Barbie karaoke machine, and I had, like, hits of the 90s, which were things, like, when I was 3, and I had the karaoke machine. So I had, like, NSYNC, I had Britney Spears, I had Backstreet Boys. And so I have these little pink and green and pastel, like, purple tapes that are, like, all 3 of those that I used to always play on there. And then I have all my mom's, like, country ones, and I have her rock ones, and, like, I think she has a Cure tape in there somewhere. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff in that box. But
Oh yeah, like when I grew up, my dad has, like, he also so he collected, like, vinyl, and he collected lots of CDs too. So, like, he has, like, these big fat binders of, like, CDs and stuff. And at one point, he collected his favorite songs from all of his CDs and burnt them onto one disc. So whenever we were in the car with him, he had, like, a disc with, like, a few hundred songs on it. And we just play through all, like, this music. So I've, like, whenever we're like, oh, what kind of music do you like? I kind of like everything. Like, I like most music. I don't like some country. I like some country I like, but there's some of it that is arguably kind of trash. If you could say that about everything, there's some rap music that's trash. I like some rap music. I don't like lots of it. I like some of it. I don't know where you lean, where the Americans or Texans or San Antonians, or if you have a funny name for your people, go with music, but I found just kind of everywhere.
We are indeed San Antonians. I think Austin is Austinites. I've lived there for like almost 4 years, and I'm not entirely sure. But San Antonio is San Antonians. Like, a lot of people here like country, and then there's like Mexican country, which is weird.
That's a thing?
It's like Tejano music, because it's like Texas Mexican country. Tejano music is like a whole other genre. Like, it's weird. But then there's just like cumbia music, which is just like dancey Mexican music, and like those are big here. Otherwise, just like normal music. But like everyone still has like their genres. Whenever I think of like my high school, though, my high school and middle school was very much like into punk, like metal, and like hardcore. So like when I think of like stuff that I listened to back then, like that was like everyone had like a metal band like in middle school and early high school. Like that's what I remember, is like everyone was in like a hardcore band. Like that was very much a thing. And so I feel like that influenced a lot of like music that I like. Like I'll listen to a bunch of like screamo music some days, and I'll be like, ah, yes, the olden days.
When I go to the gym, I'm like listening to some like, as all I listen to is like I have a playlist that I've just called grunge, and it's just like there's a section of it where it's just all like, I don't know, that one Armenian band.
My genres that like I mostly listen to is like either like something in between like punk and hardcore. I listen to a lot of like hip hop and rap, and then I listen to a lot of like Broadway show tunes. Is like my three most listened to genres.
Chop Suey by System of a Down. That song, you know, everyone knows that song. But like my little brother, I played him like "Wake Me Up When September Ends," and he had no idea what it was. And this was the biggest song when I was a kid. Everyone loved this song. It was too long. The video was like 7 minutes, and it's like, you don't know any. He doesn't know Green Day. He doesn't know Simple Plan.
Wait, did you guys have VH1 Jumpstart Hour every morning with their cousins like I did?
Did you guys have Simple Plan down there?
Yeah, I know that people listen to Simple Plan. I don't listen to Simple Plan.
Yeah, because they're French Canadians. Met them once. They're cool. If they're like a French Canadian band, odds are I've met them at some point.
They came to French Canada.
Because they came to French Canada, and my mom is big in the French Canada music scene. So I was like, hey, look, French. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. They're all friends with her on Facebook. I'm like, that's really interesting. But no, like I think some of my bios at one point on like dating apps, I had it as like still trying to get out of my Simple Plan phase. Is kind of a joke, because like I used to say, like, if I had to say what my favorite band is, I guess I'd say Simple Plan. I haven't listened to them in forever, but they just have like, at one point here's a good reference, when Scooby-Doo was coming back, because there was like the old Scooby-Doo and then it got purchased by Warner Brothers and stuff, and when it was coming back, the Scooby-Doo What's New Scooby-Doo or whatever, that series, I think it was that one, was all the music was Simple Plan music. Like the intro theme song was Simple Plan. All of the songs they put into it was Simple Plan, and I just remember watching that as a kid. And I'm like, this is the best. Like, and none of the music made any sense. It was like Scooby and Shaggy running away from some like white thing on a roller coaster, and like, I don't want to, and like grow up is playing. And you're like, or I'm just a kid or something. I'm like, this makes no sense, but it's Simple Plan. What's wrong with that?
I wonder whose choice it was to choose Simple Plan for all of the music.
I was like, yeah, like, and then like when the live action, most of my childhood was Scooby-Doo. When the live action ones came out with like Sarah Michelle Gellar and like Matthew Lillard, they had that one song played in it by Sugar Ray, and like, that's the only reason I like Sugar Ray, is they had that one song in Scooby-Doo. And like, man, that movie didn't age well either.
Oh no.
Like, and it was like perversely sexual at some points.
I remember my cousins watched it a lot, and I remember just being like, this is an interesting kids movie.
Oh yeah, no, I was like, it really made me think about things. It was one of those things where it was like I began to. It was one of my transitioning movies where I was like, huh, women, huh. Hello, Velma.
So were you one of those kids who had like the phases where you were like, gross, girls? Because I've never known anybody who had one of those. Because I was not.
Yeah, no, I was one of those people. I was like really awkward as a kid, and I mean I'm still awkward, but like I never really had that many friends. But then there was always like the only girls that ever like liked me were like kind of like the outcasty kind of too quirky to be real people, and so. I was never, like, I don't know, I just never thought of, like, there was one girl when I was, like, in, like, grade 1, 2, or 3, one of the three, I can't remember, I went to her birthday party, I just remember, like, I really liked her, I was like, ah, she's really, really cool, and then she moved away, and I was sad, but, with, like, Scooby, there was, like, one music video from, I can't remember who it was, but the song was Dangerous, and the music video is just, like, about, like, it's just following this very attractive woman through like the sunglasses of like men, and it was just like the weirdest looking visual video I'd seen as a kid. And it was just like there were just things in my brain where I remember like just things clicking. I was like, huh, that's a thing. Just all of a sudden my interest was kind of like, It was like the first YouTube video I ever watched was like an Axe body spray commercial that my brother showed me.
God.
Where like a dude falls through like, sprays it on himself, and he falls through like the floor of the change room, and now he's in the women's change room, and there's just fog over everything. And I was like, that was the first video my brother ever showed me on YouTube. That's my introduction to YouTube was an Axe body spray commercial.
Okay, mine was salad fingers, so it's not much better.
No, definitely not much better. And then I remember, like, when Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was coming out, my friends at the lake for, like, 2 solid years, because there was, like, a big period between the first one and the second one, my friends at the lake had all seen it, and I hadn't seen it. And they were always like, oh, you gotta show them, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, blah, but it has to be dark, and then they'd always forget. So, like, throughout the 2 summers, they kept on bringing it up and forgetting about it. And I was like, what is this thing? And finally they showed it to me, and I was like, huh, that's a thing.
There's so many conspiracy theories about it.
Oh, yeah.
People piece that thing together all the time, and it's wild to read some of the ideas people have for it.
Yeah, those are good videos, though. Like,
yeah.
There's some things that, like, there was one, like, I remember when I first, like, stumbled across, like, I remember seeing Philip DeFranco when I was very young, or, like a very long time ago. I remember his, like, intro and the thumbnail and stuff from when I was a kid, so then when I saw his thumbnail show up at some point, I started watching him again, and then through that I found SourceFed, and then I watched all the backlog videos, and then I just caught up, and, like, I just watched everything they put out, and I was so pleased. Like, you know, people were like, oh, the new hosts weren't as good as the old hosts. I'm like, I didn't care. I liked them all. Mm-hmm. And, like, I was working on a piece of, like, fan art for them where I was, like, doing this whole Illustrator thing where I was doing every single host they ever had. I was going to put it all together. And when I was almost done that, they announced that they were getting canceled. And I was, like, so devastated. I was like, I've been working my butt off. And I was posting updates on Twitter and stuff, and like, oh, there's Sam Basher liked my post or whatever. I was like, I was so happy. Or like Raina Scully retweeted it, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then they got canceled. And I was like, well, that's a bummer. But yeah, no, that was like a big hit. And I started following Steven before that came out. It's actually how I found you. I saw you comment in one of their videos, and like your comment was like liked a whole bunch, and I kind of liked
SourceFed video?
No, on a SP7.
Oh, on an SP7 video.
And I was like, that's kind of cool. So I looked at your stuff and then your poetry and whatever. And this is calming. This is nice. Because I have dysgraphia, mm-hmm. so I can't get my thoughts out on paper, but I could say them out loud. So poetry and stuff, like, I could always, like, BS some poetry-ish kind of, like, verbally just say something that sounds poetic. But I could never write it down, so it was just kind of, like, nice to... I started listening to podcasts for the same reason recently, where I was listening to Dax Shepard's podcast. He's the Kristen Bell's husband.
I love how that's how
Kristen.
he's known.
But yeah, I mean, he was also in Without a Paddle, which is one of my favorite movies. I don't know, I just listening to people who can talk more than they can write, which is kind of why, like, I think I could either be a stand-up comic, or like a radio host, or like something like that where it just involves talking, because I can talk for days and days and days, but I could never write anything down.
Yeah, dude, that's why
I
people
remember,
have like a lot of my writing process is like just getting my phone and like talking into like the recording thing.
oh yeah,
Because I don't know how to write it at that point. So it's like I
yeah,
just listen to the recording that's like maybe 30 minutes of me just rambling, probably like 3 or 4 times. And then after 3 or 4 times, I know which parts I kind of cringe at listening to it repeatedly. And then
yeah.
other parts that are like, oh, I liked those words. And then those are the ones I like actually keep and like write down and like make another like actual version of it. So it's like that's how spoken word poets do it sometimes, where it's like they have like a whole routine that's more like just the fact of like listening to it than writing it out.
Yeah.
Those are interesting.
I was kind of struggling on finding a topic for it, and then I just kind of remembered I was walking down the hallway and somebody was talking to me, and they're like, I've never realized how tall you were. And I was like, it triggered it because there's next to nobody that I've met in person on this earth that has not mentioned my height, and like even people that mentioned at one point, like one of my teachers, we were like, it was one of the last days of class, and he was standing by the door, and I was walking out. He's like, I've never noticed how stupid, and he's short. He's a short guy. He's like, I've never noticed how stupidly tall you are because you never stand next to me. And I just walked by him, and he was like, this is ridiculous. So I ranted about how people want to be tall. And I was like, you don't want to be tall. Being tall sucks. But my thoughts were so kind of all over the place that I had like some ideas written out, but the teacher was like, oh, you need to write a script. And I was like, I can't write a script. So I was like, can I just like transcribe it later? He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I kept on trying to record takes of this podcast, and podcast is a loose term. It's like 2 or 3 minutes long. But I kept on I recorded so many bits and so many like thoughts and discussions, but I had no way to connect them. And I also have ADHD, and like I was working on it late at night, and my meds had worn off, and I was like super just everywhere. And I just kind of thought, like, you know how funny it'd be if I just took all of these random like kind of stories and mashed them all together at random moments. So I took it all, I kind of started like meshing them together, throwing classical music underneath that kind of changed with it and that changed the tone of it. And I was like, this is cool. Like, I could add a video aspect to this too that would make it even better. So I like filmed some stuff. I got my little brother to film me doing things, just random stuff. And then I ran out of footage that I filmed, and I was like, dang, there's like half of this left. So it's like I have a lot of backlogged like videos I've taken with my phone. So it's like half the video is like whale watching that I went on once, and then it's just like it's random clips here and there of stuff. And the last one was like super kind of messed up because it was a video I took a few summers ago of like we were working, and I was working out in the provincial park, and this guy had stepped in an anthill at one point that I was working with, so he's covered in like ants. He's like, man, why is it biting me? And he like goes into his shirt and he takes out an ant and puts it in like the armrest of the truck we're in. And so then they all start like picking its legs off. And I'm filming this because I film things because, you never know when that could come in handy. And like all you hear is the dynamic of the truck is I'm silent, I'm kind of laughing. There's a dude who's like just edging them on. There's this one dude who is ripping the legs up, and then there's one guy commenting on everything who has the most dull expression ever. He's like, oh no, man, and then like at the end of the video, the ant gets crushed by one of the guy's phones, and you just hear him go, no, not Grant's phone. Just like the most like bland commentary ever. And I'm like, this is so good. But like the video, the audio is just me going, oh, you don't want to be this tall or whatever. And then the phone slams down on the ant. And I was like, that's symbolism.
Wow.
That's what happens.
I'm like visualizing this whole thing, and I'm like trying to imagine like what you would have been saying like over that, and then you're just like, crunch.
Yeah, you can find it. It's on YouTube. It's there.
I feel like I'm gonna need a link to this.
Oh yeah, no, it's a trip. It's it has 51 views, so it's quality.
Views Views mean nothing. If I've learned anything, views mean nothing in this day and age.
I don't know. Some of my videos have stupid amounts of views. Actually, no, none of them do. They all have like the only one is like the 600 views. Everything else has like 10, which I think those are just random people. One of our things actually though was with my program is each video, like we have like the whole session. We have 2 semesters. Each one, first semester and the second year is you work on live action stuff, and then the second semester is animation. And at the end of it, you show your video off in front of some previous students of the program, and they critique you. And it's a whole process of it. And so for the animation one, I mean, you saw my one about the windows, which was cutesy with a flower and a mug, and I wanted to throw up. It was too Pixar for me. I was like, oh, this is too happy. I hate this so much.
It was so pretty, though.
When I was explaining it, I was like, I want to die. This is too nice. I want it to burn.
Well, at least you have range with like the ant thing, like through that.
Oh yeah, I got like killing ants and then flowers and mugs loving each other. It's a whole social commentary about circles and squares. But the one on the animation, there's this one girl in my class, and she was really good at like photography and like spoken word and like very inspirationally, like very self-love, very feely kind of. She was very into new age things. But when it came to animating, not the best. I'm not gonna lie. I spent hours trying to help her zoom in. It was just so hard. But her video, in the end, like you could clearly hear the music that was crappily recorded on a detuned ukulele. That there was a skip in the soundtrack, and it was clearly a skip. Like the music stopped and started playing again, and it was like, oh my! It was so hard to watch. And at the end of it, one of the guys that was critiquing it, he said, like, every week we do a little, like, a class. We'd all watch the progress. We'd critique what we thought of everybody's projects, and we all kind of like tried to sugarcoat it for her because we didn't want to like crush her because of how, like, it showed promise at some points, but like even her walk cycle, there was like just a frame in the middle where like the arms would be at the side of the body was missing, so it just kind of looked like their arms were like just breaking constantly because there was never any middle section. And it was just the whole, and there's one of the 3 people that like one of the 4 panelists or what guys critiquing it, he basically just destroyed her. And it was like we all thought the same thing, and he just said if this was a YouTube video that I happened to click on, I would have clicked away within seconds. And we were like, everybody was just quiet. But when we all left, we were like, that was the funniest thing anyone has ever said. And then one of my friends ended up working with one of the other guys that was critiquing us, and he was just like, yeah, no, everybody thought the same thing. It was just nobody wanted to say anything.
Wow, it's kind of brutal, but like, who else was gonna tell
brutal.
her?
No one else, and she dropped out of the program, and moved to LA because why not? She's a character. She's a character. But yeah, no, it was like everybody. We just kind of left, and me and my friend Colin, we were just like, he went there. Like that was. We were kind of like shocked, and then we kind of started laughing because we're like, he went there. Like we were all afraid to go there, and he just kind of went and like straight at it. Like this is not good. Like it had some some ideas, but whenever she went to go make a video, she'd always kind of pepper in her voice, which she not a bad voice, but she tried to sing. She's not a good singer. So her first video, she had some of her voice, and she'd ask us like, "Oh, what are your thoughts on this?" And we're like, "Tone it down a little bit." But she had recorded. We didn't know that she had recorded voice for her animation, and like we'd heard the ukulele that was great, I guess. But she'd recorded herself singing, and we're all sitting there. We're all in dressy clothing, all sitting on chairs. The things are getting projected on the big screen. You got the people critiquing us, watching it, or all our teachers are there. And her things are playing, the ukulele's going, and everyone's like, okay, fine. And then 20 decibels higher than everything else. Her voice comes in auto-tuned, not even saying words, just kind of going, ah! And we were all just kind of like, and she's sitting next to me, and I was dying. Like, I was like, I laugh at everything. It doesn't matter what it is. I laugh at everything. It's a terrible trait to have. I laugh at everything. And I was like, I almost bit a hole in my cheek. I was like, this is so... And then it repeated it, and it was like, oh no, because you had to... They played everything twice.
Oh,
so we had to watch it again. And then shortly after, her phone started ringing, which was... Because she had her laptop out, she looked the most professional out of all of us. But then her phone started ringing, and everyone was like, oh my... How is this possible? Like... We were reminded so many times to not have our phones on us, let alone on. And it's like, I don't know, like, if any fun school stories like that happen in good old UA or UT or whatever, but like,
I wonder if our film classes are like that, like the ones where like people actually have to like, because I know that's the thing that happens. You have to show like your student films, and like that's a big thing that goes on, but like I haven't actually been in one of those because like we don't get those kind of critiques in like our poetry class. I know that like some people have those in like their workshops, like they're a little bit more like harsh, but like our program is mostly like everyone has their own style because you have to apply to get into the creative writing program.
Okay.
So they feel like we're at least all decent writers, like none of you are like terrible to begin with.
Well, I mean, it was the same thing with us, right? You had to send in a portfolio, and it didn't really matter what background you were coming from. I actually asked one of my teachers, like, was there like a lot of people? Because there was only 11 people in my first year.
Dang.
Very small class. And then our second year was 9. Because a few people dropped out. So, like, I was like, so was there, like, a whole bunch of people? And he's like, yeah, no, there's a lot of people that apply. But, like, you guys seem to have, like, it doesn't matter what background you're coming from, as long as you show some sort of creative ability. And that's why, and that one person, she'd always get, like, offended by teachers sometimes, like, one of our teachers, like, you could consider taking the second year. Because our program's 2 years, and it's very condensed. Like, full-time schedule, 3 semesters a year. You have summer semester, you have your fall, your winter, and you have 2 years. It's very like jam-packed. And he suggested to her that she could take it over the course of 2 years to kind of alleviate, because the second year is arguably much harder than the first year. But she took that as a great offense. And I was like, he's just looking out for you. He doesn't want to see you fail, which she inevitably did. Most of the classes. But like, it was more of he wanted to help her out, right? And then every now and then, like he'd say some comment that she took great offense to, where it was like, you know, when we were making websites, and he was like, I'd like to see more like connectivity, because she was a great photographer. So it was like, I'd like to see more like of a flow through the style. Like, there's not much style here. I'd like to see more happening. And she was like, oh, what does he mean? And like, I was like, no, but you show so much promise, but like, nothing is being applied. And I found, like, even with website making, like, even if you're not coding lots of design into it, my final website was, I like helping other people build stuff, but I hate doing it on my own. Mm-hmm. And I was just so bored, and I was doodling ideas, and I was like, at one point I had done something where I had sketched everything out, and then I used that. I was like, that's kind of neat. So I ended up just making everything on paper, taking pictures of it, and then photoshopping it into elements that I put into the website. So the whole thing was a piece of crumpled paper. But my teacher was like, I like this a lot more than your other one, much more original. I was like, that saddens me. I really liked my other one. It was all color coordinated and had infinity background that was tileable. I was like, okay. I was kind of bummed, but I was like, I get it. Cooler, I guess.
So do you really like the designing things and like coding things more than like your animation stuff, or do you like the animation stuff more, or like all kind of neutral?
I'm kind of neutral on everything. That's the hard part about it, is that you go into all the aspects, but like you never go deep into any of them. Mm-hmm. So I like almost everything I did. I mean, the music side, like I like playing music and listening to music, but like a lot of the sound design I wasn't very good at. But I don't know, it's hard to say. Like I enjoy the problem solving of coding because it's how my brain works. I hate making my own thing unless I have a solid idea. But if I look at, like, when I was doing my internship at this one, like, big company, they didn't have high hopes for me when I showed my work and I was like, oh, can I do some programming? He's like, oh, here's this stuff in 7 languages I don't know. And he was like, in my final report, the guy was like, yeah, I was very surprised on how quickly and how well you kind of came up with solutions to things. Because, like, I just find problem solving, like, it's very fulfilling when it's like, okay, here's a bug, here's something I want to change, how would you change it? And you have to think of how you would do it. And that bit I really like. The animation stuff, if I'm in a block, I hate it. But, like, if I'm, like, with my whole Windows thing or the whole, like, cafe scene, it originally looked very different. And then I had a test thing where I just had a few lines that kind of built up the scene. And I had the one guy walking through and kind of like, I like this. Then I colored in the scene. I hated it because it looked so flat. Because the whole thing was I had, like, with After Effects you can do like a 3D scene, and I really liked the way it, like, tiled out and looked. So then my teacher was like, well, why don't you just try, like, making it all in pencil? Like, that's kind of neat. Make only the characters, like, people and, like, colored in Photoshop, and then, like, make all the scenes on paper, which I wish I hadn't done, because holy crap, it's a lot of work to draw in all those buildings. Like, it looks like, oh, it's just a storefront. The storefront is, like, this big on a piece of paper, and, like, you have to color the whole thing in with pencil, and it was a lot of work, lots of sore hands. But yeah, I don't know, I like everything. It's really hard to choose.
I mean, I feel like that majority of the time too, so I understand.
Yeah, except for writing. I hate writing just because I can't write. I like the creative process, I just can't write, so I don't like writing. I found the whole process of making videos harder than animation, or anything really, because they wanted you to do, like, storyboards and, like, detailed plans, and that's not really how I work. Like, whenever I make a video, I have it very vivid in my brain, and it's the same thing where I can't get it down on paper. Like, I made one video, I don't know if you saw it, was a 3D animation of some kid walking through the woods naked, and then he picks up a leaf. And that's the end. And my teacher was like, well, you need a detailed storyboard. I was like, it's a kid walking through the woods, and he picks up a leaf. End of video. And it was like, I had, like, this whole argument with him, because the character that was decided because he made the model. He was like, hey, you guys can either make your own models, or I can make some. He had made, like, Mega Man and, like, some guy from Team Fortress 2. And we all threw in ideas. I wanted Handsome Squidward to be made, because that would be amazing, a 3D model of Handsome Squidward. Come on. But there was, like, Stewie from Family Guy that was one of the options. And there was this African character from some classic African cartoon that I'd never seen called Kirikou, and I was like, that's whatever. But that one won over Stewie Griffin. No, that one won over Jack from The Incredibles.
Interesting.
And so then, but the character is famously naked. There's a lot of nudity in this cartoon. And so the character design itself is naked. So then my teacher puts on, like, this, like, he said I'll put on like a diaper, but then he puts on, like, a onesie. So then I have to, like, repaint the model, and, like, I had, like, this whole argument. I was like, we had to, like, say what our ideas were, and people were like, oh, you know, he's walking through, and, like, I was like, I want him to be walking because he's a naked guy. Like, there's a whole, in the Simpsons movie, or one of these Simpsons episodes, there's this whole bit where Bart's naked, and he's skateboarding through town, and his junk is always covered, except for one shocking bit where it's, like, very uncovered. I kind of wanted it to be like that. My teacher was like, I don't know if I really like that, because the character will be naked. I'm like, but he's naked. That's the character design. And then there were people in the class who came from Africa at some point, or from South America, and they were like, have you seen the movie? I was like, no. They're like, this literally happens in the movie. It's him walking through the woods, and you never see anything, but then he picks up a leaf. And I was like, of course it happens. I had like this whole argument with my teacher, and I was like, this is ridiculous. He was more mad at the fact that one of the people wanted to kill the baby. One of them wanted to make him explode, and he was fine with the child exploding, but me suggesting the fact that he could be naked was too much. It's like, oh. It was like a 2-week long debate with him trying to make it so that I could have a potentially naked child in my animation. Himself wasn't naked. He had underwear. Like, I made it so that everything was covered in case something happened. But, like, it's just the suggestion of the fact that that's what's happening. And there's no music playing, there's no nothing. You just hear him crunching his way through the woods, and he was like, huh, and picks up a leaf, and then that's the end. And it even zooms out as if, like, nothing else has happened. It's just this kid walking through the woods, and he picks up a leaf. I made it very clear that that's all that's happening, and it was pretty well received. I don't know, I thought it was pretty funny. And it's only like a minute long, and I was like, I don't care. It's good in my books.
But I totally understand that whole, like, storyboarding thing that you were saying earlier, how, like, they were making you do it, because I think I have to do that for one of my media projects. I have to make, like, a 1 minute long animation, and I have to, like, storyboard it before, and be like, these kinds of shots, and, like, what's the lighting source, and, like, where are we moving through, and I'm like, I just want to make the thing. So it might be one of those things that I, like, go and make afterwards and see what I actually did with it. Because I've done that before in classes where they're like, what is your writing process? And I'm like, I just wrote it. What do you want me to say?
I had a similar thing in, like, career development in, like, grade 9. The teacher hated me, but there was one of the assignments was, like, how do you get up in the morning? And I'm a very literal person. Super literal. Like, I wrote down, and it was on 10, but it's how do you get up in the morning? I had 0 on 10. How is it that my routine of how I wait, how I get? But she wanted, like, oh, what makes you motivated to live in the morning or something? Why don't you kill yourself every day, like, kind of thing? And I was like, I get up, I brush my teeth, I eat my breakfast, I've put my clothes on already, and I come to school, and that was it. And it was like 2 lines of text, and I got, like, nothing on it, and my teacher was mad. Like, I almost failed career development. Like, she did not like me. Like, there was this one assignment where she kind of alluded that we should do it, but she never said we had to do it, and only 2 people in the class did it, yet she was mad at me that I didn't do it. I was like, nobody else but those 2 girls have done it. Why am I getting punished?
Because she knows that you were the one who is like, well, it's not literally on, like, the thing. Like, it has to be done.
I was the kid that was like, if they're not there within 15 minutes, we can leave. Which is definitely a thing, I think. It's not a written law, but everyone knows it is.
Yeah. It's like, especially in, like, college classes, if the professor's not there, like, 5 minutes after start time, you out. It's like, why aren't we here?
5? Oh, no, we go 15 up here.
No, we don't really care. Especially, like, my geology class one time, it was like one morning. I think our professor didn't end up coming in until like 25 minutes in. He was very late in traffic that morning. It's only a 40-minute class, so it was like halfway through. Yeah. And so like the people who had stayed were just people who were like there eating breakfast and like on their computers, which I was one of those people. I was just in the back, like on Twitter, just like do. One guy was watching anime like 2 rows in front of me. Like it's just, we were killing time before our next class.
I don't know, we only had the one classroom, so like we have, basically, because there's only 11 or 9 people that were in my program, we had there was the year 1 classroom and the year 2 classroom, and it's just like a computer lab. The year 1 classroom has no windows, and it's just a bunch of islands with computers on it, and like, we had like the groups of people. I was next to my best friend, and then there's those friends over there, and and it was just like this, but the second year 2 one had windows, and it was so beautiful to see outside, because like we were there from like till like 4 in the morning at some point trying to finish projects, and because we had 24/7 access to our classrooms, so just being there inside a brick room where like every now and then I'm like, oh, I haven't done anything, wake up at 2 in the morning, go to class to work on something, and then like you have no really perspective of time because you're inside a concrete room. And then at some point you're like, oh look, it's 7. The sun is out. Wow. Like where I'm working right now, like it's so, because I had my internship at this one place and I was next to a wall of mirrors, which is terrible because I'm slightly narcissistic and I feel the need the need to look at myself in mirrors. So when you're walking up to your desk across the long room with the wall mirror, and all you see is you walking, it's like this. It's too distracting. So you sit down. Beside you, there's like no walls. You see the people, and then there's just a mirror. So like you have to think, if they look over, they see two of you. It's just harsh. But the place I'm working at now, it's like I'm in like an office building, which is like very off-putting to me because I only ever worked in like provincial parks cutting grass in a forest. So now I'm like at a cubicle looking out across downtown like Winnipeg, and I'm like, this is weird. Like sitting here, but I have like a really nice view. Like it's, if you ever look up Winnipeg, you'll get two like landmark buildings. We have like the it's the Human Rights Museum for Human Rights, which is like for only one in Canada. I think only one in the world potentially. Don't quote me. But it's like architecture. It kind of looks like the not Sydney Opera House, but like the Disney. It's very like architecturally different. We'll say it's got like stone bricks, but then like it's like a big tube that goes up, and there's lots of mirrors. It's very cool. But then we also have like this bridge. They used to have like this one restaurant on it. It's like this weird looking thing. So it's like the one section of like art of my city that's like really architecturally different, and my window's facing right at it. Oh, that's kind of cool. All like the landmarks of architecture in the city, right there, all next to each other. Our skyline is really, actually no, we don't have a skyline. But you know, you don't live in a big place when you can't act. If you're on the edge of the town of the city, there is no skyline. There's a few buildings here and there.
Like my neighborhood is like kind of at least in San Antonio, it's like kind of on the edge of like one part of town. It's like on the north side of town, and like even if like you go to like the field like past like where the neighborhood is, you can see like down into like the hill of like where like the main part of the city is, and like the city lights
cool.
just go
so got,
on
like,
for like eternity.
Thing. Yeah,
and it's like
that's neat.
And then in Austin, you just see the giant UT Tower, which you can't escape from ever, and then there's the Capitol, and then those are the main things that are there. The Frost Building, that's the other thing. There's like 3 giant things, and then everything else is just bright and large, and that's all I really know about the Austin skyline.
Yeah, no, like, I don't know. I guess like landscape in the States is one thing I'm very intrigued in, because I live in Manitoba. It's kind of, we're next to Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is the flattest place. It's very flat. There's nothing in Saskatchewan. It has Regina, which is the capital there. But the joke about Regina is it's the city that rhymes with fun. My mom told me that, so right, Regina rhymes with fun. And then my little brother's like, "What do you mean? It doesn't rhyme with fun?" And you're like, "Yeah, one day." But it's so super flat. And then Manitoba is also kind of flat. We have quote unquote mountains, which are like foothills. We have lots of lakes, but then you think of like, we have a desert technically. It's like the southern part of Manitoba. There's like this section that's kind of, I don't remember the name of it, but I've been there before. There's cacti, or now cactuses, or whatever it is now, because octopi is not a word. It's kind of sad.
That's gonna give me a life crisis just thinking about those words.
Oh, cacti is something. Octopuses, though. It's octopuses. But we have, it's very hilly, like stupidly hilly, and there's cacti. There's like the biomes of like the area. There's like plains. There's like birch forests. It's like the most randomly like place. Oh, here's a swamp. Here's a this. Here's a that, and it's all within like 10 square feet of each other. And it's like the weirdest. And it's called a desert, although it's the least desert-like place I've ever seen. But it is a desert, and ironically, that's where Austin, Manitoba is. We have lots of funny names for towns. We have Miami. We have Starbuck, which no Starbucks in Starbuck. It's kind of sad. But we got Starbuck. You got Miami. There's London, Ontario.
We have Paris, Texas, and other fancy
Well, I mean,
places.
Quebec is New China, so I think that's how they discovered Canada. We're looking for China, and then they found us, or this place. And then, all the slavery and atrocities and stuff and all the terrible bits. We like to not think about that period of time. John Smith can do Pocahontas the way John... Nope, not that way. I just mean, Pocahontas can be that era. We're still dealing with those repercussions. I don't know. That's the thing. You never think about, like up here at least we don't think about in the States, that they also did the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
But they also had slavery much more than we did, I believe.
You guys also stopped it much sooner.
Yes.
Like, slaves from America escaped to Canada.
Yes. We had the railroad, right?
Yeah.
Underground one. Yeah, no. I don't know. There's this whole Jim Jeffries bit about gun control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know Jim Jeffries at all. He's a stand-up comedian from Australia, and he mentions how in Australia they had the biggest massacre ever, and I don't know if it's been. He says it's never been beaten. I don't know if it has since then, because lots of things have happened in the past few years when it comes to massacres. But he's like, yeah, and then Australia banned guns, and everyone was like, yeah, that's fine. And he's like, oh, the States, they got Sandy Hook or whatever, where lots of kids died, and you guys kind of went, maybe we'll get rid of the big guns. And he brings up all these points about how, like, he understands the whole Second Amendment. But the fact of the matter is, the Second Amendment was written when you had muskets, and it was to go against the tyranny. Like, if the government became bad, then the people could get their muskets. And he brings up the fact that they have drones, and you can't beat drones.
Yep, that is
guns to a drone fight. You will lose against the drones. And he says, you guys, and then he's like, oh, you can't change amendments. Some guy argues with him, and he's like, well, no, it's called an amendment.
No, it's you can't change the Bill of Rights is the thing that, like, some people argue, and then it's like, but the amendments are made to amend the Bill of Rights, which is...
Yeah.
It's not fun arguing with people about laws in America.
Yeah, kind of. It's very polarizing. But then he brings up the fact that you guys used to have in the amendment, in the Constitution, you guys got rid of slavery, which in the same time they had the same arguments about guns that they have now. It's like, slavery is bad. Well, I didn't misuse my slaves. I used my slaves to protect my family. I'm a responsible slave owner. I keep my slaves locked in a safe. And he goes, it's a really funny stand-up bit. You should look it up. It's really funny. And I know sometimes stand-up can be like very like edgy, but like you have to understand stand-up's it's a joke.
Oh yeah.
And like there are people that get too hurt about things, and I get annoyed by people that get hurt by everything.
Stand-up is like intentionally like a thing where you're like listening to it, and then you're gonna have a moment where you're like, oh shit, like they said that.
Yeah, like the new Dave Chappelle had like a stand-up special that came out like last year, I think, and he had throughout the whole special or one of his specials, he was like, so the third line of this show is I'm gonna bring up the 3 times that I met O.J. Simpson. And it's like every now and then he brings up an OJ joke, and it's like, okay. And like just the thing is, he seems like a cool guy. Like, he's nice to me. I didn't think he killed those women. And like every now and then you just hear stuff, and it's like, okay then. But I've never been like offended by stuff like that.
My family has a very dark sense of humor, so I feel like naturally I'm not that offended by some really bad jokes. Like, I just think about them a bit because, what is it? My family usually goes to, like, Rockport, which is, like, a kind of, like, fishing town in Texas, and it has, like, this little, like, bay, and we usually go there for, like, Easter, and, like, on Easter, we usually always watch a stand-up special.
Yeah.
And so, like, we'll watch, like, something really, really bad on what's supposed to be, like, the Lord's holiday, which is hilarious. So we're sitting there, like, all around, like, eating dinner, and we're just listening to, like, something terrible, which is probably, like, Dave Chappelle, or probably, like, Chris Rock, or something, like, and it's just,
Eddie Murphy. Holy crap, Eddie
Murphy's were bad.
I remember starting to watch an Eddie Murphy thing, I was like, I can't play this out loud. I just can't. I can't play that out loud in the house.
Yeah, but again, those are things that my family watches as a collective, with like my grandparents and like me and my cousins and my Thea and my mom, and just that's our family experience. So I feel like naturally my humor is like, I may go to dark places in my own humor sometimes.
One of my favorite stand-up comedians actually is Dylan Moran. He you probably definitely don't know who he is. Have you ever seen Shaun of the Dead?
No.
Have you heard of Shaun of the Dead?
Yes.
Okay, well, he's in that. There's this Irish TV show, Black Books. It came out like a long time ago, but he's like the main character in that. Basically, very Irish, super Irish, and his whole comedy sketch, he just acts drunk the whole time, and it's so good. Like, he's just so funny. Like, he has this whole bit on potential, and he's like, he's talking about how there's all these books and how, you know, it's always about trying to unlock your potential, your inner potential, blah, blah. And he's like, why would you want to do that? That's your potential. Don't look at that. He's like, you'll open it up. You think your potential is like, oh, marble floors with drapes and like, oh, the piano. Actually, look, you open the door and all that'll be there is an old gray cat on a box spring bed, mewling and smoking also, while an emphysemic landlady walks by going, and he's just like, yeah, that's about right. You don't look at your potential. It's potential. You don't look at it. And that's another comic you should look up. It's older stuff, so it's like really, it's like, it's so good.
That sounds like one of those things where it's like, what is it? Like, when you have, like, goals for yourself, like, even if you, like, fall short of them, you'll always think, like, maybe I could have done that. But if, like, you could really know that you were always gonna fail, like, that's really...
Oh, yeah, if you know that that's as far as you'll ever get in life, because it's like, I never want to peak. I never want to have, like, the high moments of my life, because if you know that's the high, then this...
Yeah.
Like,
I like chilling in the lows.
Hey, you met that guy... Somebody was like, hey, you met that guy from Epic Movie... That's the high point in your life. I'm gonna have a sad existence because, like, I was in grade 11. I was super psyched about it, but like, I was 18. I was 17. I have a long life, hopefully, ahead of me. I would like to have hires than just I met Kevin McDonald.
But yeah, these are the reasons why we're not allowed to unlock our fate and know what's happening.
Yeah. I like when people were always like, "Oh, what superpower would you like to have?" Like, what superpower would you go for?
Ooh, this is too much. I'm like, would I like to read people's minds or would I like to teleport? I feel like reading people's minds.
Those are two that were high on my list. I'm like,
But it's always like, I would like to just be able to, like, go everywhere, because I also just want to see a lot of the world. I don't like driving.
I love driving.
Those are important things to me. But then reading people's minds, because A, I like to know how other people work, and B, I'm just nosy. I want to know. But then I might ruin everything by knowing.
My whole thing when that, like, I would either go with like super, because teleporting is fun and like it's too dicey. So I was like either like super speed or like mind manipulation. Mind reading would be too much for me. Like that would be like I'd know what people are judging beforehand. Then you could circumvent people from thinking things about you. They're like, oh, he's tall. I could erase everyone's ambition, like thought process of like he's a tall guy. I could get rid of everyone. Nobody would ever say I'm tall ever again.
That's like more power. That's like too much power than even mind reading. That freaks me out.
I know. I just want to like wipe everyone of the ability to be like, you're tall, because it's like no. Like I used to say like the day I start to get shorter, let me know. I will hug you. I will give you a hug. Like, let me know when I'm getting shorter, and I will be like, oh dang, I am. That's new. Because whenever someone says, "Wow, you're so tall," like, what is my response supposed to be? Oh, wow, I didn't know. Wow, I thought everyone was really short. Like, what are people like? What's the point of pointing out something that's so obvious? It's like saying, "Hey, look, the sky's blue." It's like, cool, nice. That's added nothing to anything ever. Although I don't think the sky's blue is the reflection off of something, or it's the gas in the air. I don't know. There's some reason it's not actually blue, but I think. But like, it's just the obvious is like, why would you need to tell me this? So I don't watch movies with my brothers. All he does is point out the obvious, yet he misses all the details. Like, we started watching Ghostbusters yesterday against my will, and he just, within 5 seconds of the movie, he already had asked 4 questions.
And that's my grandma watching movies. She's like, "Oh, what's he doing? What's he thinking? What's gonna happen?" And we're like, "We're watching this for the first time. We're in the movie theater, Nana. Stop asking me."
And it's just like, could you pay attention? It'll tell you it's a visual art form. It's what they do. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been made.
See, but the opposite of this is for people like my tia, because I remember being little and we watched like The Lake House. Which, have you ever seen The Lake House? It's like a cheesy like rom-com with like Keanu Reeves and like Sandra Bullock. And like they have like this magic mailbox in there. Like she moves into this house after he had lived in this house, and like she ends up like saving his life like later, or like he was supposed to die at like one point and he didn't, and like they have like letters in this mailbox from like when she lives there that are from him when he lived there. It's very complicated, but like you understand watching it that like this mailbox like transcends time. They meet each other at one point before she ends up like holding him in her arms. Like she doesn't like know that she met him until it like happens later. So like she doesn't know that like that happens. But my aunt was so confused after that movie. She was like, "I don't understand. Like what's going on?" And we're like, "It's the mailbox. It's the house. There's like magic in the mailbox. Like the letter just appears in there and that's what happens." But like to this day she doesn't understand that movie, and I was in like 3rd grade when I had to explain it to her and be like, it's not that deep. Like come on.
No. Yeah. No, my brother, and like the thing is, like he gets lazy. Like we were watching the new Star Trek show with my dad because my dad loves Star Trek, and I guess I do too. And the Klingons are speaking Klingon, and there's subtitles. And my little brother was like, "Oh, what was all that about?" I was like, "Didn't you read the subtitles?" And he was like, "No." I'm like, "Why would you read them? I didn't feel like reading." "Then why did you ask me what it was about?" It's like, "Well, I didn't know. I didn't read the subtitles." It's like,
I'm like, if you're not going to read the subtitles and you're going to ask me every time, learn Klingon at this point.
Yes, at least learn the dang language.
You can learn that language. They have dictionaries for them and classes.
Yes. It's like, I took grade 9 Spanish. I say I'm partially trilingual. I can kind of understand Spanish if they speak slowly. It doesn't go anywhere. Ever. They never go anywhere. They're just super great and terrible at the same time.
I don't know why when you said wheel it triggered, like, have you ever seen that movie that's about a tire?
Oh yeah, come on. Rubber? That's my favorite movie.
Oh my god.
Rubber's the best movie.
That movie's so strange. Just like watching it's like fascinating.
It's fascinating because of how many like artistic choices they made. Like if they'd gotten rid of the whole subplot of like the people on the mountain with binoculars, I think the movie would have been better. But they added that to it, and then there's the whole like, "Oh, we poisoned your turkey" thing, and only the people that didn't eat are now alive. And it's like, what is going on? They're watching a tire blow people's heads up. It's like, this is such a twisted movie.
It's so weird. It's so weird. I feel like I need to watch it because it's been a long time and it's so strange.
It's a gem of a movie. It truly is.
I haven't watched like another movie that I feel like I was as like just what about in a while.
Yeah.
Although I'm trying to remember who recommended. There's a movie. I was asking for a bunch of like road trip movies, and someone recommended the movie Risk Cutters to me, which is like really interesting. It's about a bunch of people who like it's basically like the afterlife for all the people who commit suicide, like where they end up going. And so it's like, but they're all basically in like this kind of like purgatory, like normal, like it's kind of like Earth but like suckier place. But it's like it's so fascinating. Like the movie is just like all these people who are like still kind of depressed, and it's just like but there's
everything's a bit worse now, but you can't die.
Yeah, and this one song on the videotape by this guy who, when he was alive, he had been in like a band, and he had it in his pocket like when he died, so he could still like play it. And so they're in the car, and this one song keeps replaying, and like eventually they get really into the song because it's like the only.
It's basically like the Proclaimers in How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, and so like that song gets like stuck in their heads, but then as you're watching the movie, you also get like really hooked into it, and it's just like the whole movie is very strange, but also really good. And it was like, I haven't seen a movie like that since that movie. It's just some movies are like very unique and like their feeling of it, where you're like, that was interesting. Yeah,
there's like, and there's like cheap horror. There's like movies that you find on YouTube, but like they're actual movies. Like you'll find like a bunch of like the Sharknado kind of movies on YouTube. But like there was this one called Tasmanian Devils, which I found really good, but like bad. They jump off cliffs and stuff, and they have parachutes. But then the new rookie guy doesn't pull a chute fast enough, and he falls into a cave, and he gets a thing through his back, and he starts bleeding, and it fills all the sacrificial pools, and then the Tasmanian Devils come alive. And then it's like this whole movie is them running away from these crappily rendered Tasmanian Devils, and like you know where the story's going. All the new guy is meeting the new girl, and they like each other, and like you know everybody else is gonna die, and those two are gonna fall in love, and it's very like cliche, but it's like I like this movie. But yeah, and I just actually on the canoe trip again, we for some reason started bringing up like weird like movies that kind of like it's just like this weird branch of movies that you'll watch, and there's this movie called Sex Drive. Mm-hmm. It's about this kid. It's a road trip movie. Where it's this kid who's like who's messaging this girl online, like, oh, meet up, we'll hook up, whatever. It's a scam in the end. But he steals his brother's like car, gets this girl to come with him for some reason, and they go through like they end up being Amish at some point, and they going down, and he ends up falling in love with her. But then it's like this whole scam, and they try to steal his car, and it's like it's a weird movie because like the title is very suggestive. But then, like, you get linked to like other ones that are like in the same world. There's like this one movie, American Virgin, which is Jenna Dewan Tatum, Channing Tatum's wife, as like this like purity ring wearing person as she goes to university, and like it's another one of those like weird like college movies. And you're like, and then you get sucked into like the American Pie Presents Beta House or one of like the really bad ones. Like you go down like this rabbit hole of weird. Like cheap movies, and you're like, dang, how do you like you gotta get out of there some point. But like they're just weird movies that a lot of them have the same actors, and they're just like cheaply made, and they all have like the same purpose in them. Like there's one, what is it called, like Celebrity Sex Tape, where like they're like where these guys just like they end up like filming somebody doing it with somebody else, they post it online, they make a lot of money, they're like, what, do this more often, because the actress or whatever had gotten like a boost of popularity. So it was like basically like the whole like the Kardashian
yeah, Kim Kardashian
thing, right? And so they're like, oh, so then this whole thing is them making an enterprise of making like fake sex tapes of people, and it's like these movies are bad. They're like they're not good movies, but like when you're young, they're just like, yeah, they're movies. Yeah.
And after you fall into that rabbit hole, you're like, I can't look away at this point. Like how some people really love the Sharknado movies just because they're so bad.
I remember watching the first one, I was like, this is the best thing ever. And then, like, I think I have Sharknado 5 somewhere, and I could probably... The sixth one is going to be the last one. They announced it. Sharknado 6 is the end of it. But I think the thing that introduced me to that genre of movies was Conan O'Brien. He plugged... What was it? It was, something versus Sharktopus. It was Pteracuda versus Sharktopus, which is pterodactyl and a barracuda, and a shark and an octopus. And he plugged it because he had a cameo in it, where he literally gets an octopus tentacle shoved up his butt. It blows his head off, and then his head is flown into a beach volleyball court, and it replaces the volleyball. So you have a bunch of like volleyball players using Conan O'Brien's head as a volleyball. And he showed that scene inside on a show, and I'm like, I need to see this movie now. This needs to be a thing in my life. And then it brought me down to like the whole like mecha shark versus mega shark, and like all these like weird like movies. And like then one of the good ones, there's like Lake Placid, which terrible name, god awful name, but it's about like this very placid means still or like calm or whatever. It's just a bad word. I don't like it. Very close to something very different. But it's about like this giant crocodile in like just in a lake, and it's got the guy that plays Mad Eye Moody in Harry Potter. You probably haven't seen Harry Potter.
I've seen Harry Potter.
Okay, you know Mad Eye, right? With the iPad, with the Mad Eye. You got that guy as like a sheriff. I think Betty White's in the movie. As like an old lady who feeds the crocodile. And it's like, I love survival movies. I found that I love terrible survival movies where, like, you just, like, it's not a very high budget. The effects might not be great, but, like, you're just watching somebody survive.
There was a point in high school where it's like me and a bunch of my friends would like go to my friend Brenda's house, and like we'd always watch horror movies, but like just
Yeah.
ones that were like rentable on Redbox. So it was like a bunch of like no name random stuff that like our friend Logan would literally just like get like 5 of them and like bring them. So they were usually like terrible. And one
Yeah.
time there was what is it? It was some no name random horror film that like no one had ever heard of. And it was like the most brutal thing we've ever seen. They were like ripping off people's fingers, and like they were like just like crunching things, and like teeth were being pulled, and it was like it was
Dang.
brutal. It was actually like visually, and as far as like things, it seemed like these people were literally like captured for this movie and were actually being tortured. Like it did not
Yeah.
seem like these people didn't seem like they were acting. It seemed like they were actually being like tortured, which was very good as far as the acting standpoint went. We really enjoyed it. And then there's
Yeah.
another one where it started and it was literally like we realized that it was not, in fact, a horror movie. It was a horror. It was something that played off as a horror movie, and it was very much porn. So that was interesting. Our friend Logan, like, in the moment there was like boobs, he was holding like a bag of Lay's in front of his face, and he's like, "Is it over? Are we done?" And we're like, "No, this is still going." And then we're like, "Oh, this isn't a horror movie."
Oh, it was like actual porn.
Yeah, or it was like very much disguised as.
Oh, okay.
Like it began into. We were like 15 minutes in, and we were like, "Is the horror movie part starting, or is this just?" Like,
And then
how
at
it's
one
always
point, the
gonna
pizza
be?"
delivery man comes up and
We
rings
were
on the
like,
doorbell.
We should switch the movies now. We were just there, and we're like, "Oh god."
Well, like, yeah, no, and like there was one, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like lamprey. It was about lampreys, like the eels thing with like the teeth. And it starred the guy, Doc Brown from Back to the Future. He was in this movie as like the mayor of the town, and like the lake was filled with lampreys, and like they were eating people, and it was like it's this whole movie. The whole thread of the movie is eels, and it's like I was like, this is so bad, but so good, and you have to think, how did they get this actor to be in this? It's like Tara Reid in Sharknado. You're like, how is she in this? This movie's so bad. How did they get Tara Reid? I mean, sure, her career hasn't been the best,
Yeah.
but how is she in this?
Money. If you're that broke, you do anything at that point. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember from my childhood, there's just like my grandma always wanted to watch scary movies, but she didn't want to watch them alone. So me and my like other child cousins like were there watching them with her. And one of them was like about this town where I can't remember what happened and like how they got to this point, but there were a bunch of spider eggs, and maybe they had been messing with the spiders' genetics or something, and they ended up with like, a giant spider.
Eight-legged freaks. Eight-legged freaks.
Is that really like the name of it?
Well, no, that's one with Scarlett Johansson in it.
I watched this when I was literally like 6 or something. Like it was just like there were giant spiders and just spiders taking over this town. That's what I remember.
That's basically what the movie was. It was like radio. There was basically this guy had 8-legged freaks. The kid loves it. Whatever. One day he goes over, a guy's not there. He's like, "Oh, that's weird." But like there was like toxic waste being poured into like a nearby pool that was like seeping down into the building with all the spiders in it, and it started making like mutant spiders.
Sounds right.
And 2002. How old would you have been in 2002?
I would have been 6. That sounds about right.
So yeah.
Wow.
And Scarlett Johansson has like this one scene where she just gets coated in like spider spray. We'll say.
That sounds right. Oh my god.
Yeah. I have a distinct and then they end up in a mall, right? They end up in a mall at the end. It's a great movie. I don't know what it's not.
But yeah, my grandma didn't want to watch any scary movies alone, so she was like, "Hey, I want to watch this movie. Like, come and watch it with me." And so I was just like, "What is happening?" Our babysitter. It was quite a time. Oh, that was the other thing that I watched with her. We watched Black Christmas when I was also like really little.
I've heard of that one.
It has like. All I remember is Michelle Trachtenberg. She was like the only one I remember in there. She was in like Buffy. She was in.
Oh, her sister, Buffy's sister. No.
Does Buffy have a sister? I'm rewatching Buffy, so like I don't remember who she is in the show yet.
Well, her sister comes along. Well, she didn't have a sister, but then her sister was something that some people had created as a key, and then the memories were all erased. Well, they made fake memories because her sister never existed, and then one season, all of a sudden, she had a sister. I loved Buffy. It was my favorite show. Like, my brother started watching it, and then I was like, oh, that's so cool. So then I started watching Buffy. Like, Angel, I preferred Angel to Buffy, just because Spike showed up over there, and I love Spike.
I also haven't watched Angel yet. I'm looking forward to it once I get to... I'm trying to remember which season of Buffy...
It's whenever Angel leaves.
Angel goes in. But, like, I used to watch Buffy with my grandma when I was little. I would come home from preschool, and we'd watch Buffy, which was, like... So I had a huge crush on the guy who plays Angel, and like I did when I was like 3, which like
Daniel. Whoa, he.
It's like Daniel or David or something.
And then his last name is like BOH something.
Yeah.
See, no, for me it was Michelle Gellar. You have Sarah Michelle Gellar. Whoo boy, and then she was Daphne in Scooby Doo, only further cementing that. Do you watch Supernatural?
Yes. I haven't watched the last, like, 3 seasons, but yes.
Okay. They had a Scooby-Doo episode?
Yes, I heard about that.
And, like, I was watching some, like, behind-the-scenes stuff, and it's like, yeah, so this episode... No, it was, like, a talk show appearance with, like, Jensen Ackles or whatever. And he was just like, yeah, no, they animated, like, Daphne in, like, ways that they've never shown Daphne before. You're watching the show, and then you just see his anime guy go, like, huh, and it's like, yeah, no, that's about right. I don't know. I feel like I've heard from people that Supernatural is mainly for girls. It's kind of like Vampire Diaries in the same Twilight-y kind of vibe, but where it's just two macho dudes. I don't know. I like the show,
but there isn't really girls. Like every now and then, it's like they roll around with some girls, but it's like there isn't really like a stable girl in there. It's like they're very attractive, but like.
But I think it's just they're like eye candy. Or something.
I feel like I like their characters more. Like, they're attractive to look at, but it's like, when you get invested into their characters, like, once you hit season 10, man, like, you're locked in for life. So, like, I haven't caught up with the past couple seasons, but, like, I have to now. I have to
it's good. The end. It's good. I think they're having one more season, at least.
They're going until they tell them that they want to stop. Like, that's literally
because they keep on going. Like, holy crap, They keep on things that you thought die come back. No one's ever dead. Like holy crap!
This year? Season 14, 13?
Yeah, season 14.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Wow.
Like when I finished
the longest sci-fi show, like seasons back. I think after 10, because I think the last one that held the record was X-Files.
Yeah, no, I never watched X-Files.
I just started watching it, so I'm on like season 2, maybe.
Did you ever see Fringe?
Fringe. No, but I heard that was really good.
That was a great show.
It was canceled early though, right? So it's
only
like series.
It only had like 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah.
But it was a great show. Holy crap, that show was like dope. Like I remember there was this one show that was based off a Stephen King novel or the short story called Haven. Not Under the Dome. Oh,
I know my grandma was watching that. That's all I remember.
My grandparents were hella into Under the Dome, and like it hurt because like I lived at my cottage for the past few summers, and they'd be out on like weekdays or like, oh, Under the Dome is so I had to go watch Under the Dome with them. I'm like, this is the worst. And then when they left the dome, it was like, oh, what do we do now? We're out of the dome. But like this show Haven was based on like these people that like I don't know if you ever saw Haven. It was like I think it was a sci-fi show. It's like this cop goes to this Haven, Maine, and like it's this small town, and it's these people that have powers that came from like the future, but they're aliens, and it's like all these. Oh, it's such a weird show. I think I have it all downloaded somewhere, but like. I want to rewatch it someday because I remember it. Like, if I think of what the progression of that show is, it's insanity. At one point, they're like all huddled in a school because there's things in the streets that will kill them, but they're just black balls of goo. It's like it's such a weird show that I can't even like quantify what the hell goes on in it.
Some shows are like that. Like, if you try and explain like anything to like someone who hasn't watched past like the pilot episode, it may be too far. Like, there's just too much lore at that point to like.
Well, I feel like Game of Thrones is kind of like that, where like if I were to explain to you the last episode of Game of Thrones, like in season 7, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones.
I've watched the finale of every season.
So have you seen the season 7 finale?
Yes, I think so. I think I watched it at my cousin's house. It's just like a thing where it's like I always end up at
the one
my
with the
cousin's
wall
house.
that does the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. If that was the only knowledge you have of the show, you'd be like, "That's really cool." How long into it is it? 7 years. No, I don't feel like watching that. Just to get to that bit there, not really worth it. I don't think.
There's so much that like, I can't believe that it took that long, but also like, I guess
it's such a good build-up.
Yeah.
I can't wait
I've
for
seen all of
2019.
season 1, and then after that, I've only seen the finales and like episodes here and there.
Yeah, like there's only one actor that I think was changed during the show, and like it bothered me at first, but I hated the guy who was acting like the original actor for it. And it was like when the Dragon Queen or Daenerys was in like the desert. She finds these 3 thief brothers or something, and 2 of them die, and the third one is like, "Oh, we like each other." But then that's the end of the season, and the next season, completely different dude. And it took me like a second to be like, "Oh, it's the same
really
thing."
unsettling when it comes back to the season and they change the person. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, it's like that with like Arrow or whatever, like on the CW.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first season, they set up like, "Oh, this is her sister who died on the boat."
Yes.
Blah blah blah. But then later on, it's not the same actress.
Dude,
They even reshoot those scenes on the boat so that actress is in it. And you're like, what?
That and like in Pretty Little Liars, they changed the brother after I think season 1 of like the girl who died, Allison, and so like season 2, like they're talking about Jason and like they're mentioning Jason. I'm like, they didn't even like get close to what this guy looked like. Like at least with Sarah, they like made sure that like she was still like a blonde girl. This one was like the brother was like a short-haired like dark brunette. What is it? And then after that, he has like a dimpled chin. He has like a long hair that's like beachy, and like they play it off like he went like edgy because he's like really straight.
He went to Europe for a year and
He was
came
really
back.
straight edge in the first one, like really intense, and then in the second season they talk about how in high school he was like this stoner dude and like all this stuff, and I'm like his whole backstory changed like when they brought him back.
Yeah,
like, I'm so confused. But Pretty Little Liars is like the most inconsistent show I have ever watched.
I remember watching. My mom was really into that show at one point, and I was bored or something, and I just watched. My brothers and dad were away for like the weekend. It was just me and my mom, and we just watched like 4 seasons of that show, or like 2 or 3 seasons of it straight. Like I biked to Little Caesars to get pizza, and I came back in a thunderstorm. And it was like, we need to keep watching this damn show just to watch that show. And I can't, I don't know. And the thing with Supernatural, though, is that I like, okay, so you got Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki. Jared Padalecki was in Gilmore Girls. Mm-hmm. I only know that because my mom watched Gilmore Girls. Jensen Ackles was in Smallville. Mm-hmm. I love Smallville. Smallville is a terrible show, but it's an amazing show at the same time.
It is so bad. I remember watching it faintly from when I was much younger, and it was...
Yeah, me too. Like, it was on late at night. Like, it was late at night in Canada. I only remember seeing a few episodes when I was a kid, but I remember them very well, and when I saw them again, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. But, like, there are episodes of that show that are so niche and so specific. Like, this... season finale of season 1 or 2, they're like, oh my gosh, did you hear Lifehouse is playing at prom or whatever? Like, they're like these, like, they're always like early 2000 bands, and I'm like, oh my god. Or there's one episode where they have like Kings of Leon playing at a Stride gum factory.
Oh god.
As like an underground show. And you're like, what is going on? And then they have like kryptonite infused Stride gum that makes this one guy real stretchy. You're like, this is a thing that happened. And then he goes back to Smallville and dunks on Clark Kent because he's stretchy now. And Clark's like, there's something different about you. And he's like, no. Just like stretches over and dunks the basketball. It's like, oh my gosh. This is a real thing that exists.
So many old shows are just like a time to like look back on or like rethink about.
Oh yeah.
Anything before like 2012 maybe.
Yeah.
Still like arguably like bad. Like if you go back on it, like the time has passed.
Like,
because, like,
that's
so
the funny
many
thing with
jokes
like
happen.
Arrow, right? Arrow came out in like 2012. Smallville ended in 2012. That's the weird thing about that show. It has like 10 seasons. It ended months or a year before Arrow came out. There is a Green Arrow in Smallville.
Yes.
They had the whole like Justice League with like the crappiest they had Thad from Blue Mountain State as Aquaman. Like, it's such a bad it's such a terrible show, but it's so good. So good. And like their Green Arrow was like this like guy with like a long face and like the most butt-chiniest butt chin and like just like the blondest of
I
blonde.
remember the actor who plays him, because yeah, I remember. And then doesn't he end up with... Who does he end up with in the end? Does he end up with Laurel? Or no, there's another girl.
I don't even know at that point.
I'm trying to remember the lore.
And then it's like, oh, it's Lana. Just get rid of Lana. Kristen Cruick, though? God damn. She changed me. That's another one of my childhood things. Because the one episode of Smallville, Kristen Cruick was Lana Lang.
Okay.
The one episode of Smallville I remember as a kid seeing was the one where they go to kiss, but she had the kryptonite necklace on, so he starts to fade away.
Oh my god.
And like, that was like, as a kid, that was the one episode I saw of Smallville, and I was like, oh my god, I love this. And she's like in a Canadian TV show right now. It's funny though, because a friend of mine, I have like a bunch of actor friends, because Winnipeg is a very big hub for acting. Mm-hmm. Like you got Vancouver and Winnipeg are the two main ones, because Winnipeg is very easy to pull off in New York. Or like downtown Winnipeg, very easy to get a New York vibe, or Chicago. So like, at one point we had, I can't remember his name, but he was in Star Wars, he was in Black Panther, he was Forrest Whitaker. Oh, yeah. He was here at one point. Kristen Cruick was here. We've had like, it's like a hub for actors. So I've got a bunch of friends who just play extras and stuff and whatever. Extras, you get paid a lot as extras. Like, it's insane. Like, it's good work for sitting around for hours in the background of a cafe instructed to do absolutely nothing. But then again, background actors are very important because they add life to the scene. But if they're too distracting, then it becomes a very big issue.
You have to be like normal looking enough that like no one will pay attention to you.
Yeah, but not too normal, because if you're too normal, then you're like, that guy seems weird.
Is there anything you want to plug?
Most places, I'm Vincent QW, or otherwise on YouTube, you can find me under Yhonvy, which is just YHONVY. Also, a weird name. Guess you could check out my website. You don't need to. You can see some of my art, some pictures, some of my videos. My name, probably.
I'm like, when you figure it out, just send me some links for it.
But yeah, no. I'm just... I post things every now and then. Mainly on Instagram.
If you would like to be a guest on a future episode of the podcast, please fill out the survey in the description below.
Hey, aspire but never open the door. Never know, but always dream.
Indeed. Otherwise that old lady's there with a cat.
Yeah, old lady's there with a cat smoking. You never want to see that old lady.
I feel like that's the part that I'm going to end the podcast on.
Yeah. You never want to see the old lady, kids.